I thought I was going to do this video alone, but apparently my cat has decided to join me. Anyway, hey guys, how's it going? If you don't know me, my name is Brian. I love movies, I love watching movies, and every year I write down every single movie that I watched that year, whether it's something I've seen before or something new. Now, I like to watch a lot of movies in a year. In fact, this year I've watched 142. And this year I've tried something different. I wrote a little review for every single movie that I watched. Now, without looking at those reviews, I wanted to see if I could actually coherently talk about every single movie that I've seen this year in one take. Hence the clock. The cat? That's just to keep your interest while this gets boring. So, in one take, starting from January, let's get started. And before we do, I know what you're going to say. Brian, it's the middle of December. You're going to watch more movies. Why are those movies going to be included on this list? Why not wait until you've seen maybe 150 movies? That's more of it's a better clickbait title at least. Let's get started. First off, I watched Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Now, I'm kind of new to the Coen Brothers verse, but I found that I don't love their movies generally speaking, and I know that's a crime for a lot of people, but for me, the comedy of it just has never really resonated with me quite right. Now, I will say I did enjoy Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I was a little bit disappointed with it, I'm not gonna lie, because they said that, oh, this is actually an adaptation of the Odyssey. When I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see this. And then I learned only one person on the cast and crew had ever actually read the book. I mean, I haven't read it either, but I was a little bit disappointed by the lack of an actual adaptation that it was. And more so, it's Remember This from, was it, The Simpsons episode? Is what they based a lot of this off of. So, I really did like it. I enjoyed every performance in it. I thought it was the best written Coen Brothers movie that I have seen, but for me, just really didn't do it. Second movie I watched that year was Rio Bravo. I watched this movie because I had heard Tarantino talk about it at length about how it's his favorite movie of all time. Everyone's got to see Rio Bravo. And while I do love me a Western, this one was a little bit too quiet for me. It's a little bit too simplistic, and trust me, I am the king of low stakes cinema. I love when it's just a couple people dealing with a problem, but this one, I don't know, it was a little bit too quaint. And now, this isn't the only John Wayne Western that I watched this year, and I did watch another one, which I really, really enjoyed, but Rio Bravo, I don't know, it wasn't there for me. The next thing I watched was Oh Hello on Broadway. This was something I watched because a friend of mine, I was doing a play called One Wife Too Many, and my friend Russell, shout out to Russell, told me that I had to see this, which is a filmed version of a show that, is it Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, I think, as old men doing a show on Broadway as different people who wrote the show. I'm not explaining it very well. But it's basically just a comedy show of these two funny guys being funny together. It didn't really impress me. There's one big puppet moment, and I'm a huge puppet fan, as you're about to find out from this whole ass list. But yeah, I liked it. It was funny, but not a lot of meat and potatoes to hold on to there. Now we're getting into The Burbs. This was my first rewatch of the year, and I didn't know it was a rewatch until after I had watched it. I found it so forgettable that I didn't know that I had actually fully watched this movie, not years and years ago. I watched it last year with a friend. We talked about it the whole way through, and somehow I didn't even internalize that I had watched it before until after it was over, and I was logging it on my Letterboxd account. So, to say that I don't like it is not necessarily true. I really did enjoy where it's set, and I did enjoy how the story unfolds, but you know, I'd say it's a little on the forgettable side. I'm not the Judge Judy and executioner on everything cinema here, but if I am can't even remember your movie and I watched it last year, yeah, you probably have an interest problem with your movie. But next thing I watched was El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie. I had just watched all of Breaking Bad for the first time. I'd actually seen Better Call Saul before I watched Breaking Bad, which that might be a whole something I want to talk about later. But I will say, El Camino, it's a nice little send away for one of the main characters. I guess I won't spoil it, even though his face is on the on the cover of the movie. But El Camino, I thought it was. I mean, it's a great, very long episode of Breaking Bad. If you just want more Breaking Bad, it doesn't do a disservice to what was already put in place, so you're not in danger of that. And it really is not it's not a bad episode of Breaking Bad, but that's really all it is. It doesn't challenge anything, and I kind of didn't want it to. I kind of just wanted an epilogue for the series, and that's what I got. So, really no complaints. It was pretty good. Babylon. Man, what do I even want to say about Babylon? This, again, some of my takes are a little bit controversial, and I apologize. Babylon, I liked, but I didn't love. I liked Babylon because Damien Chazelle is such an incredible director. I will go see absolutely everything that he makes, but man, it is not up to La La Land. It is not up to Whiplash. It's certainly above First Man, but it is not at his usual caliber of filmmaking. And as much as it's bigger than his other movies, it lacked this sort of energy to it. And I've heard a lot of people citing it as like, wow, it's like a great it's like the party and then watching the after party, like cleaning up the glasses is what I haven't heard someone say it that way, but that's sort of like the vibe that I'm getting from people. And I do appreciate it for that. However, as a musical theater kid growing up, I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is just Singing in the Rains with more nudity. Which is not fair to say about Babylon because it does have its own merits as well, but it really is attempting to tell sort of the same story there. And the visuals are gorgeous, the performances are great, but as a story, I wanted it to get deeper into these characters and less about the world itself, I suppose. Next up, I watched The Incredibles 2. This was actually a rewatch for me. I had really wanted to enjoy it more the second time. I thought maybe because the first time when I watched it, I was just such a fan of The Incredibles that I thought it might go up in my ratings a little bit. It did not. It's still it's got some heart to it, but it just lacks this soul. Yeah, there's a certain way that I like to rate my movies, and I know it always looks like I'm rating movies really, really low. If you've ever seen my Letterboxd account, I don't know if I'm putting ratings over here to show what I rated them, but man, The Incredibles. I'll get back to that. When I rate a movie, a 5 out of 10 is not a bad thing. 5 out of 10 to me means like this was a fine movie. I liked this. I've seen a lot of 5 out of 10 movies. That's like an average movie to me. However, if your movie feels like it has no soul, and I don't know another way to explain that, but if your movie feels like it's not actually made for the purposes of making art and it feels like it's just a studio throwing it together to sell tickets, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 10. Not because it's bad, there's technical things, but I'm not a technical person. I just like the story. I just like to hear different stories from different perspectives told by different people, with some fantastic performances. That's what I'm looking for. I don't really care about the technical stuff. So for me, that never or very rarely bumps it past that 1 out of 10, But anyway, tangent over. It's not like this video is not going to be too long anyway. We're still in January. But let's Incredibles 2, all that to say, I feel like it had some things going for it, but it was not. It was not The Incredibles. They could have done it 10 years later, man. If they said it 10 years later, and then we kind of changed something about the story, didn't just try to tell the same story, but now with Elastigirl doing what Mr. Incredible did in the first one, I don't know. It seems like it is a pretty easy cash grab. They took it, and I think most people would agree it didn't pay out. So that's a big disappointment. But and to say the rewatch did not gain much for that either. But that was after I'd seen Better Call Saul, so I did enjoy Bob Odenkirk. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Next thing I watched was The Whale. I liked The Whale quite a bit, actually. I thought, beyond just great performances, I thought this was really cool to go into a movie theater with Darren Aronofsky. It was Darren Aronofsky. Please God say it was Darren Aronofsky, who made this, and to go, okay, we're not gonna try to do, we're not going back to Noah, right? We're not trying to go hit you with all these crazy visual effects and stuff like that. Instead, we're gonna try to tell this whole story just in this apartment. And I do know it's based off of a play, and I hear the play is really, really heartbreaking just to be a part of the production for, and I believe that. But I think that translated so well to theaters here. I was so excited when I went in with certain expectations of I can't wait to see if Brendan Fraser's still good, and came out of it going, wow, I could see 100 more plays done just like this. Plays that take place in one room, put on screen at this caliber with this level of talent from the whole cast and crew. I would love it. So yeah, The Whale, definitely a thumbs up for me. JFK. Okay. I did enjoy a lot of JFK. I think that it's a little bit overhyped for what it is, because when it came out, the idea of unearthing these conspiracies and that sort of thing was kind of a exciting or new idea, and in the modern day, I think we're all tired of hearing about conspiracy, so it's not even necessarily that it doesn't hold up, but it doesn't hold up for this year for me, because I was so exhausted by conspiracy already that I didn't want to sit down and hear about a conspiracy for 3.5 hours or something. And even doing research afterwards, most of these conspiracies that it's literally built off of are debunked anyway. So it's not even a good it's not even a good for that. So yeah, it's made like a movie. It's filmed well, but I'm just tired of hearing about conspiracies, But let's get into something positive. This I think this was the highest rated movie that I had given to the year at this point, which was The Banshees of Inisherin. I loved this movie. Martin McDonough, however you pronounce that. I love him. I the first thing I saw from him was In Bruges, and I was always I like him okay. But then after watching The Banshees of Inisherin, everything changed. I even read his play, The Pillow Man, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy can write a story about just people talking. And it's literally, that might be even be a contender for one of my favorite movies of the year. And I saw that early on in January. So Banshees of Inisherin, if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. It's such an incredible story that you can tell even the writer of the movie didn't know how things were going to work out. Or I think he even mentioned, without spoiling it, the scene where that takes place in the pub where the stakes are set was not even planned. That was he just started writing that in, and then suddenly the entire plot of the movie came out of it. Oh my gosh, what a talented man. But Banshees of Inisherin, I would highly recommend. Literally the same day, on January 31st, I also saw Infinity Pool. That's a weird double feature. I'll tell you what, from Banshees of Inisherin to Infinity Pool, it's made by something Cronenberg. It's Cronenberg's son, who made it, I believe, and it was so strange. And I really love the body horror of it. I thought it was so cool to watch, very visually interesting. And this isn't the movie's fault, but I guess that's why I just have too many opinions, and I think that's why I needed to make this video, because I just needed to say these out loud. I hate Mia Goth. Not her fault. She's not a bad actress. I just hate her. And maybe that means, oh, well, that means she plays a great villain, someone that, you could really root against. When I see her, I root against the screen. I'm not even rooting against her as an antagonist. I'm just like, I just don't want to watch her anymore. There's certain actors, and I'm sure everyone has them, where every time when you see them, you're just like, oh, it's one of their movies, and you're just like, you can't sit down and watch them without just getting exhausted. That's what Mia Goth is to me. So, and also, the plot of Infinity Pool is cool for 45 minutes, but it does not hold its own. So, Infinity Pool is just not it for me. That's January. Every month I didn't necessarily watch as many things as I watched in January, but that was just one of 12. So why don't we go ahead and speed this up, shall we? All right, next thing I watched was The Searchers. I mentioned that I watched another John Wayne movie that I really liked. The Searchers is it. Funnily enough, my cat here, it's his favorite movie he's ever seen. I swear. When I'm watching a movie, he will sometimes come over and he'll look at the screen, and then he'll do this. He'll sleep by my side or whatever, or he'll walk up and he'll walk around. He'll go get food. He'll get water, whatever. The Searchers, which is not a short movie. It's probably like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. He stood up. He walked onto the table, and he sat down, and he watched the entire movie from start to finish. It's like it put him into a trance. I don't know if he thinks he's like a horse or something, and that's why he got so invested in it. But I thought it was a fantastic movie. I see why it's so acclaimed. But I didn't love it even half as much as he did. If he was awake right now, he could give you the real review of this thing. Anyway, I also watched on the same day Phantom Thread. By the way, not the way to watch Phantom Thread. That is a slow burn John Wayne Western followed by a slow burn Paul Thomas Anderson movie. And if you've ever seen a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, you know they're all so well done, but they are slow. So I really should have saved it for another time. I probably would have liked it even more. But I did really, really like it. It's one of those things, it's like getting slowly poisoned and then waking up one day and realizing how sick you are now and how well you felt 2 months ago. And realize you've just been slowly getting more and more sick. That's how this felt. Because by the time I got to the end, I was just completely, what is it? Is it frogs? I think it's frogs that like you put them in hot water and you slowly turn up the temperature and then they die. That's what this movie did to me. I won't spoil it, but watch it. It's really, really good. And by the time it gets to like the conclusion, it doesn't even feel like a twist. It feels like the natural conclusion of what needed to happen next. And it's so remarkable based off how crazy it is. So Phantom Thread is great. I also watched the Robin Williams movie 1 Hour Photo. 1 Hour Photo was pretty cool, actually. I had seen Insomnia before, so I did know that Robin Williams was capable of playing these kind of characters. Um, I liked him even more in this than I did in Insomnia, to be honest with you. I thought his character was very unusual for him. It felt like beyond just being like Robin Williams, he knows how to act. It's like I'm surprised he does comedy, or did, I suppose. I was blown away. So, 1 hour photo. If you're looking for, I feel this is not probably gonna make sense to a lot of people, but if you really liked Gone Girl, I would recommend 1 hour photo. That I can't I don't know how else to put it. Enjoy 1 hour photo. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend it. Hold on one second. You like my goblet for today? It's because I'm drinking water, and I thought you'd make fun of me if I was drinking out of a normal glass. Anyway, the next movie I watched was Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, which this is a rewatch for me. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Birdman. The people who know me, one of the first things they learn about me is that this is my favorite movie of all time. I could watch this movie every single day and gain something out of it. I literally, anytime that I'm feeling down or I'm feeling like I can't, that I can't do it, right? Like I'm not capable of doing great things. I watch Birdman and my entire perspective changes. It's not because there's any heroes in Birdman, because there really aren't. Everyone in that movie is a bad person, but there's something electric about how it's put together, and just that feeling of a one take movie. See, look at that. Media influences us in ways we don't even realize. Um, like when you make a one take video after being inspired by a one take movie. Crazy. Um, but I love absolutely everything about Birdman. Edward Norton is maybe my favorite working actor right now. And then, Michael Keaton was fantastic. The only thing I don't like about it is that, like, 4 years later or something, he starred in the Spider-Man Homecoming as a Birdman, which the whole thing in Birdman is clearly he should not go back to putting on the cape. And I'm just so disappointed by that. So now that movie is still my favorite movie, but every time I watch it, I just feel like, no, Michael, you don't understand the parable of your own movie. Anyway, yeah, definitely. If you haven't seen Birdman, you haven't lived, I guess. The Conjuring. This is the first time watching for me. I've seen Annabelle before, weirdly, but I've never seen The Conjuring. I liked it. It was okay. I don't really have too much to say. There's a couple cool visual things that are in the movie. I think the way it handles ghosts is neat. And I see why at the time it was really like, wow, this is a crazy art house horror movie that you're not prepared for. I am. At this point, we've all seen so many. We've seen our Hereditaries. We've seen, I mean, every flavor of horror movie. We've seen Hansel and Gretel, even, right? Like Gretel and Hansel, whatever it's called. We've seen all of those movies that, like, A24, that production company, kind of popularized that sort of style. This feels like the proto version of that. So again, it's good for what it is, but I don't know if it holds up so much these days as much as it used to. I also watched The Gallows Act 2. The Gallows Act 2 was bad. It was a bad movie. Here's a shortcut to getting into my brain. Any movie or book or music or anything that involves theater, I will engage with it every single time. I have seen the original Gallows movie, and it was terrible. And so you may say, Brian, if the first Gallows movie was terrible, why would you watch The Gallows Act 2, which is the sequel to The Gallows? It's because I'm stupid, man. It's because I'm stupid. I I can't explain it, but I will shortly. I promise. But I I love a terrible movie, and I also love the theater. So this somewhere fits somewhere in the middle of that. Next thing I watched was The Color of Money. Uh, this is a movie I'm surprised I don't hear more people talking about, especially because it's from such an acclaimed filmmaker whose name is escaping me right now. Another thing you got to know about me, I'm terrible with names, but yeah, this was a fantastic pool movie, um, like the game, not the pool. Yeah, it's just cool. I don't know. I don't know really what to say about it because when you're watching it, you know that meme where it's like dudes will literally look at this and go, "Hell yeah." That's what this movie is. It there really isn't much merit to it, but you just watch it and go like, "Hell yeah." It's like watching Mad Max or something, right? You're like, "Am I gaining much?" No, but I am going, "Hell yeah." So, I gave it a 6 out of 10. That's not bad. So, okay, let's get serious here because there's an array of movies coming up here, and you need to understand why I watched them and why I watched them all on the same day. I watched six, five, five movies on the same day here. So I have a friend. My friend's name is Dylan. Hello, Dylan. He and I have a tradition where we used to do this weekly. Now we get a chance to do it maybe once every couple months or so, where we would sit down, have some dollar tacos from Del Taco, have some drinks, and watch as many terrible movies as we could. When it started, we would try to watch 3 movies back to back to back. And that was just sort of our system. So we started calling it the trilogy because it was a trilogy of bad movies, a trilogy, right? And as we started doing it more and more, you just kind of get used to sitting and watching terrible movies and doing it. So we found that we could watch more and more and more. Instead of starting at like 7 p.m. and ending at midnight, we'd be starting at 6 p.m. and ending at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would be watching 5, 6 movies in a row. So this was our first trilogy that we did of this year. So that's why there's so many terrible movies here, and I can kind of get through these quickly if I can remember what they're about. So let's get started. First one, Under Wraps 2. I love Under Wraps, the original movie for Disney Channel. Live for it. Silly, goofy kid shenanigans where there's where there's just a mummy running around being silly. I'm all about that. The remake, it's a pretty easy cash grab. Lost pretty much all of the charm, but it did still have some shenanigans to it. Under Wraps 2 is a sequel to the remake, and it is so boring. They just took the exact story and just tried to repackage it in very slight ways. I don't want to say I was disappointed because I was looking for a bad movie, but I love childhood antics, and that was not it. Next thing was Freaky. This is like their reimagining of the Freaky Friday story, if you're not familiar with it, where a teenage girl gets body swapped with a serial killer. And so now the serial killer is running around, but he looks like a teenage girl, and this teenage girl looks like the scary serial killer man. And I mean, in concept, that's okay. If this was like a college humor sketch from 2010, then I'd be like, this is really funny. But being that it's an hour and a half long, it just wasn't. I just didn't like it. I'll be straight up with you. I just didn't like it. It's a bit long and it's not very funny. Anyway, next thing we watched that day, this kind of broke the trilogy. I know I literally spent 5 minutes explaining what the trilogy is. Occasionally we'll watch a movie that we like. Both of us had realized we hadn't watched Fight Club in a long time. And so we watched Fight Club. Obviously, it's a rewatch for me. Really like it. Really like what it's doing. I think Tyler Durden might be one of the coolest characters ever made. Just bar none. Brad Pitt in that role is perfect. Like I said, anything with Edward Norton's, I'm always going to be a Edward Norton's. It's like the Tim Hortons of Edwards. Um, really liked it. I don't think there's anything to be said about Fight Club that hasn't already been said, but I agree with them. It's good, and it's not. I'm not even going to go into that. Let's move on. The next movie I watched was One Up. Okay. Now this is where what the movie's about is going to be tricky, because I think this was the movie about the girl esports team, because this girl gets disqualified from being on like the boys team, and so like you can't make a new team, so instead they make an all girls team, and it's supposed to be like this, like a girl power kind of movie, but I think if anything it comes across as really like stupid and just like tactless and bad. I wish I could tell you more about it, but I just remember sitting there and me and my friend just having a chat through this back half of that movie, because we just had nothing. We ran out of things to watching that movie. It was so dull. Similarly, I remember a little bit more about this is Do Revenge. I've seen a good chunk of Riverdale, so the reason that we watched this one was because the girl who plays Veronica plays the lead in this, and it's so funny because this movie came out in 2022, and she's still playing a high schooler, which Riverdale is getting away with it because it's Riverdale and it's the stupidest show maybe ever made. But the 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 casting of putting her in a different high school as if she's getting away with it is so funny. So I remember enjoying this one quite a bit, actually, just because it is so goofy to try to watch them put her, this grown woman, she's probably in her late 70s. Okay, she's probably like 30, but still, it's just very funny to me. Glass Onion. I had seen this when it came out initially, and I liked it. I think this is a good follow up to a good movie. I think I could probably watch Benoit Blanc mysteries forever. I like them way more than this Hercule Poirot series that they're doing with the Agatha Christie stuff. I'm really, yeah, I'm way more on board with Benoit Blanc and his silly Southern accent, and they're very beat you over the head kind of social commentary stuff. I usually I can't stand it if a movie is so overt with its political commentary. But I don't know, Rian Johnson just gets away with it because he does it so in such a corny way that it's like, I don't know, it comes back around. Next thing I watched is The Great Muppet Caper. Another thing about me, I love puppets. I more specifically love Muppets, and The Great Muppet Caper is something I've had on my list to watch for a long time, and I haven't put it off watching it because I was like, I'm not in the mood to watch it. I've been in the mood to watch this movie for a long time. I needed to be at a very low point in my life because I knew it would help bring me back up, and it did. It is just a delightful movie with delightful Muppets and a delightful story, and I love the Muppets. I love them. So more of those, please. More of those. All right, 2 months down. Time. It's like a metaphor, right? Like the inevitable heat death of the universe, something. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sitting here in the heat of the lights. But anyway, let's move on to March, which this was, until this month, because I've only seen 2 movies this month, the shortest amount of movies that I saw in any month this year. So the only 4 movies I watched this month was, one, I watched The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Um, I do love a western. This one is cool. This one is good. Um, and I did really appreciate how the story is told. And I think the title, it kind of feels a little pretentious when you hear the title, but when you're watching it, you realize that the propaganda that it's kind of putting into the title is kind of what the movie's about. So it gets a pass from me. I initially put off watching it because I was like, I bet it's just going to be up its own ass and around the corner. But it actually is really good. It's really well told, and I do actually think the title really works for it. Next thing I watched was, and no one's gonna know what this is. It's called Things Could Always Be Worse. This is a movie made by a YouTuber actually called Joel Haver. Joel Haver, if you haven't seen his stuff, it's it's so interesting. You know, it's so funny and so unique. And he's also one of the few people out there that is saying, yeah, YouTubers can make movies, right? Like it doesn't, you don't just have to call it a, like, this is a long video. This is a movie. You know, because there is a plot, there are characters. You know, there isn't necessarily story structure, but that doesn't make a movie per se. Things Could Always Be Worse. I thought it was, you know, it's kind of boring, but I couldn't stop watching it. I meant to just like put it on while I was gonna be doing something else, you know, in the background, and then I just kind of got reeled in a little bit, and the reason I rated it so low is because it's kind of it's almost a zone out sort of movie where like the plot is so loose and the people are kind of talking in almost like a dream-like way that it's almost hard to understand like where we're going or why we're talking about it. But I I would say that it's like there are worse things to watch on YouTube, you know, and it is a full length movie. So I would say I enjoyed it. Scream 6. I had to take a minute there and remember how to do Roman numerals. Scream 6. I liked Scream 6 okay. I'm kind of tired of the Scream formula at this point, which is so. It thinks it's getting ahead of me because it is talking about how people are tired of the formula, but then it just keeps doing the formula. And in my opinion, that level of self awareness doesn't work for me. In fact, you lose points for me, at least, when you're doing that. Because to me, you're just saying, like, haha, wouldn't it be funny if this was bad and then you did the bad thing? Like, come on. I get it. So if they had been self aware enough to say, people are really tired of this formula, and then to completely subvert it in a way I don't expect, then I would be more engaged. But as it went on and on, I started to realize more and more that's not what this movie is that this is going to be this is just going to be another Scream movie, but this time with the I'm blanking on her name, the Jenna Ortega in it, right? The person who went from nowhere to being everywhere, seemingly. But yeah, I don't know. I do like a slasher. I do like a Scream movie, but it wasn't there for me. John Wick Chapter 4. Similar, actually. Yeah, watch these movies 6 days apart. But John Wick Chapter 4, man, I hear a lot of people talking about how good it is. But I think it's definitely the worst John Wick movie? Question mark? I think the first one is really good. I might like the second one even more. The third one's kind of a step down, started to get a little repetitious. Chapter 4, man, had that one really cool scene. You guys know what I'm talking about. When I say that really cool scene in John Wick Chapter 4, everyone knows I'm talking about the thing where it goes top down and it's like, it looks almost like a video game. It's really cool. And like the duel moment is really neat in the movie, but there's so much just. I get it. You know, I get it. And we're just trying to create set pieces at this point. But damn, dude, John Wick Chapter 4 is just, I just don't like it. I just don't like it. There's a couple things, I don't think it's a soulless movie, but it isn't trying too hard to be there. That's it for March. That's I only watched 4 movies. Can you believe it? Okay, but now we're getting into the good stuff, or at least a good stuff here. Because on April 10th, I watched Beau is Afraid. Now this is the craziest movie to do this for. Letterboxd actually has a thing. Apparently, if you're like a subscriber to it, or if you're I don't exactly know how, but my friend is. He's like subscribed to their Patreon. I don't know. But he's like, hey, you want to come with me to the premiere of Beau is Afraid in Hollywood? Yes. Ari Aster, man, like he don't miss. So I was really excited because I knew that this was some kind of comedy. I didn't think that the Daniels, who made Everything Everywhere All at Once, were going to be sitting just a couple rows back from where we were seated in this movie, so it was kind of hard to fully focus on it. And Ari Aster came out and introduced the movie, and Joaquin Phoenix came out there, potentially having indulged on some narcotics. Like right before the movie. I've never been to a premiere, by the way, so this was like, a small kid in a big city sort of interaction. But all that to say, I didn't expect to actually get fully sucked into the movie and just love it. It's so long. It's crazy. But every little thing, it's like it's an Odyssey movie. Like it is a full thing. I had talked about the first movie I had watched this year was an adaptation of The Odyssey. Again, I haven't read it, so I can't speak to it perfectly. But this felt like a better adaptation because it evoked this grand adventure. And I think going back to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It lacked an adventure. It was just guys going a place. This, Beau is Afraid, is an adventure. And it's full of tiny little set pieces with a story that needs to be told in it. And it was just so cool and so different and so weird and shocking. Seeing you will see things in that movie that you are not going to see anywhere else. I hope. I hope for the love of God I never have to see anything from that again. But it was exceptional. I thought it was terrific. It borderline might be my favorite Ari Aster movie, which is the most controversial thing I've probably said this whole video. I put Jackals and Fireflies in here, which is the new Charlie Kaufman short film. I don't even know why I put it on here, to be honest. I don't really count a short film as a movie. It's Charlie Kaufman doing his thing. I love him, so that's why I watched it, but I probably shouldn't have even put it on my Letterboxd, to be honest, because I don't care. Chinatown was kind of boring. Chinatown's a little slow. I don't mind a slow burn movie as long as it's doing something interesting. And I'm not super in on the noir genre. So what it's like harkening back to, I don't have an intimate connection with personally. So it never really was going to be super for me. But I really do believe that if you are going to make a movie that is like pulling from another time, you can do it without just making it for the nostalgia, right? Like you can do it properly. And I just don't think Chinatown did it in a way that brought in anyone that didn't already enjoy the noir genre. Or at least you have to love Jack Nicholson. Maybe that's what I'm missing. I like Jack Nicholson. I just don't love him, Anyway, Woman in the Window. There's exactly one reason why I watched Woman in the Window, and it wasn't because I wanted to watch a boring movie about, you know, generic thriller stuff. It's such like a made for Netflix movie. I don't know if it is made for Netflix, but it's such a made for Netflix movie. But it has Amy Adams. Like, let's be real. I will watch anything Amy Adams just because it's Amy Adams. That's where I'm at. So I did not like it. But Amy Adams is always gonna just sell me on something, and that was it. I liked it. I liked her in it. I gave it a 3, which is pretty damn good, considering that I didn't really like the movie itself. But it's just her. She needs an agent, or a better one, that's gonna put her in more Muppet movies. That's what I want. The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is awesome. I had seen it before. This is a rewatch for me. I always think that someone shouldn't adapt this to be a play. When they do, send me an email. Let me know. I wanna be part of that. That sounds freaking sweet. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson in a room going crazy. That I don't think I need to sell it any more than that. If that doesn't sound good to you, you won't like it. If that sounds great to you, you will. Some movies are easy. Speaking of easy, Twilight. I thought I was Easy A was next, so sorry. Twilight. I watched Twilight because I like Twilight. I'm not afraid to say it, okay? I like Twilight. I'm not big on New Moon, but I do love the original Twilight. I think it is criminally panned for being, a movie made for tweens at the time, and so much of us grew up with it, and needed to make a stance against it, and still better love story than Twilight memes are so prevalent, but it's like this bizarre, weird monster romance movie. I think it's charming and fun, and I think that everyone's really good in it, and I like the lore of the movie. The biggest problem in the later movies is, of course, that they go on to explain the lore more. But in this one, it's just kind of like the lore you have to kind of figure out as you go. I was so on board for that. I love Twilight. I think I watch it every year. It's just so good. Speaking of Twilight, Easy A. Easy A, the Emma Stone kind of retelling of Scarlet Letter, but more just utilizing the Scarlet Letter. He is so cute. I've been looking here this whole time. You are so precious. He knows. Yeah, Easy A. I totally lost my train of thought. I watched this when I was really sick, so I don't really have a lot to say on it, but it's boring. It's straightforward. It's not my style of comedy. It kind of like it's like a worse Mean Girls sort of thing to me, and I know that's an oversimplification. Easy A is a lot of people's favorite movie of all time, and if I was a high school girl, I'd probably like it a lot more. Unfortunately, I am a 28-year-old man, and I did not like it. Seven Psychopaths. Again, Martin McDonagh. Great movie. I really appreciate the turn in that movie. If you haven't seen it, there's a point where a character says, like, what if the movie that I'm writing just did this? And then that's exactly what happens, and the rest of the movie is pretty much it takes a little bit of the beginning sets up for an action movie, and the ending is just a lot of people chatting a lot, and I love it. I thought it was very, very good. Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise was kind of good. When I watched the trailers, I was so not excited, which I shouldn't have even gone to see it with how little interest I had in another Evil Dead movie, because I actually do like the Evil Dead movies. But Evil Dead Rise has always seemed like such a boring ass movie, and it seemed so cheap in all of the trailers and everything. It seemed like an easy, cheap scare movie. But no, it is. There are some genuinely frightening things in it, which is good, and then also the way it just uses the one sort of location of the apartment, and the way it shoots it just kind of keeps it really interesting. By the end, it felt like the House of Leaves or something, right? Like it was like the house, this tiny apartment felt like it just expanded into this huge place without it ever feeling like it went too far. So Evil Dead Rise, I thought was very, very, very good. Um, Next one I watched was this little indie movie. It's called Citizen Kane. Now I know most people haven't heard of it, um, but yeah, wouldn't you know it, Citizen Kane is actually pretty good. I think its reputation does precede it just a hair, because it's too iconic for its own good. That by the time I had watched it, I had already known everything about it, and there was no big surprises to it, and it's old as well, and everything in it I've seen in other things because it's so iconic. So I would recommend Citizen Kane, but really only for the history of it. I wouldn't even recommend it. I could probably I watched a person recommend not Monopoly, but 100 other board games. There's probably like 5 other board games that weren't Monopoly. If I could remember his name, I would say it. But in that video, he just recommended, he's like, Monopoly sucks. But if you liked this element of Monopoly, then you would like this. If you liked this element of Monopoly, you would like this. That's where I'm at with Citizen Kane, where I feel like there's 100 different good things in it. Put them together, it is what it is. I could give you a list of other movies that do every element of Citizen Kane, but better. There's never going to be another Citizen Kane, but there will be parts of Citizen Kane that I could help you connect to. The next thing I watched, this is jumping into May, by the way, is Beau is Afraid. I watched Beau is Afraid twice. Most people cannot stand to watch it one time, but I had a friend who he said he was really interested in seeing it, and even though I had watched it a month before, less than a month before, I'd watched it originally on the 10th of April, and now it's the 2nd of May, and I said, let's go again. This is when I realized that I loved it, because I went from, oh, that was kind of wacky and goofy and what a fun adventure, to I connect to this character in weird ways I didn't expect to. I love the story. I love how it's told. And I won't go into all of this again, but Beau is Afraid might be my favorite Ari Aster movie. It's weird. I'll give you that. It's weird, but it does benefit from a rewatch, I would say. Not that there are twists, but the twist isn't really what changes the rewatch. It just, when you have more time, it's like a Where's Waldo movie, where the more times that you watch it, the more you catch the background gags that are happening and that sort of thing. So that is, Beau is Afraid. The second time was even better. Wow, I rewatched a lot of things. Then I rewatched The Lion King, the original 1994 version of that. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's really good. Disney at their peak. They've been trying to get back to that degree again. Hearing me talking about Lion King, that's another one of his favorite movies. Yeah, I mean, what am I gonna tell you? It's kind of fun that I watched 2 Nathan Lane movies back to back. It's just not the 2 that you'd probably immediately think of when you think of Nathan Lane movies. And then yeah, and then I had a rewatch of Jackie Brown, which, if you're not a Tarantino fan, you've probably never even heard of this movie, but it is a Tarantino movie. It's probably that one and Death Proof are probably his two most forgotten movies. And I'll be straight with you, I hated it the first time I watched it. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with me, but it actually became a running joke between me and any of my friends, whoever we talked Tarantino with, is I would say, man, I really love like everything, or not everything, but I like elements of every single one of Tarantino's movies, except for Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown has Pam Grier and probably the worst performance by Samuel Jackson I've ever seen. I don't know what the hell I was on about. Jackie Brown's good. I liked it quite a bit. I loved loved it. Yeah, I'm not gonna go too deep into it. I don't really want to talk about it. To be straight with you, we got a lot of other movies to get through. Jackie Brown, it's underrated, actually. I was, and it was underrated by me. I worry that I did any damage to any. I apologize if any of my friends have not watched Jackie Brown, because I've been such a Jackie Brown hater and I say it is absolutely not worth seeing. I apologize if that's changed anyone's opinion. First of all, because you shouldn't listen to my opinions. And second of all, because I was wrong. And I'm sorry. Okay, this is where I'm actually really scared. Um, this year, I also rewatched all the Harry Potter movies. And for the life of me, I cannot keep them straight in my head. The first couple we'll get into right now. After that, please don't hurt me. But I just don't know what they are. So let's get started. Philosopher's Stone. It's a good one. It's very childish. Chris Columbus. I love him. I think he really understands childlike wonder and enjoyment. If this was the only Harry Potter movie, I think I'd probably like it a little bit more, just because it would be so unique. But because it's kind of like the groundwork to a bigger series, it feels kind of small for where the other ones go. And I do like the simplicity of it, but because it's launching this huge series of movies and I guess books, there's an element to it that feels like, okay, we need to start talking more about other things rather than just school. So, yeah, Philosopher's Stone, I like it. That's a 5 out of 10 movie for me right there, by the way. That is like just good, no complaints, nothing I really loved about it, right down the middle. Similarly, Chamber of Secrets. I thought Chamber of Secrets, again, it starts to build on, start building up to something a little bit bigger, and I think it caught that wave pretty well. Is this the one with Dobby? I feel like it is. Is he on the? Yeah, he's on the cover. Okay, thank God. Yeah, I hate Dobby. I hate him. I was excited when he died, but Chamber of Secrets, I think it's cool that there's a giant snake in the underground tunnels under Hogwarts. It harkens back to all those rumors that Disneyland has tunnels underneath. There's just something about tunnels underneath a very generally calm, normal place. It's kind of weird to call Hogwarts a calm, normal place, but just a place that you can call safe. And then you look underneath and there's a giant snake that's been prowling around. It's cool. I like that. I like Moaning Myrtle also. I think she's neat. Finally, something that wasn't a rewatch, I watched Blackberry, which is the new Matt Johnson movie. And I thought it was cool. I thought it was really good. I do not watch biopics basically ever. And yeah, I call them biopics. Sue me. If you call it a biopic, you can go to hell. I don't care about you. You and I are not the same. But Blackberry, I think it's probably my least favorite Matt Johnson movie, but it is probably his most movie-ish movie. And if you haven't seen it, it's not at all what you think it's gonna be. You think you're gonna, because you're used to watching normal biopics. I am too, where the story structure goes, we meet this character, we see them get this idea, we watch them evolve the idea, and then screen card at the end that says here's where everything, like here's where they are now. Blackberry starts at the beginning, where we meet these characters and what they're about, and they have the idea for the Blackberry, and we skip over the entire chunk of the story of the Blackberry, where it's about developing it and making people interested in it and the reception and how well it went. That happens in like a montage somewhere. And then we cut to the downfall of Blackberry. And that's like the bulk of the film, is what happened to Blackberry that made it what it is today, which is nothing. You know, it's basically useless. No one has a Blackberry anymore. Shout out to Blackberry users though. You guys are the real ones. But no, it almost feels like a hit piece on Blackberry more than it does a celebration. And Matt Johnson, if you haven't seen The Dirties, highly recommend that. And if you haven't seen Operation Avalanche, highly recommend that too. It's about faking the moon landing, and they shot it at NASA without NASA's permission. It's really cool. All right. Wow, that was one page. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be here forever. Oh no. Well, anyway, at least you're getting a nap out of this. Let me get another drink of this water here. Jeez Louise. Oh man, I was like, if I have a big mug, a big goblet, I'm not gonna run out of water. I didn't realize that I was gonna be talking for literally hours. Okay. Moving along. The third movie in the Harry Potter series was what I watched next, and this was the last movie that I watched in May. I watched Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. This is when the series starts to go down a little bit for me in terms of my interest. I do not care about... Is his name Sirius Black? I don't know. The guy, the prisoner guy, I don't care about him at all. I know it's like... He's like Harry's real dad or something, and I couldn't tell you anything about that movie, man. It's just so... I just like watching the wizards walk around Hogwarts. It's really all I care about. And this movie starts to have a lot less of that and more of like the bigger plot. And I know that at the beginning of this I said, or at the beginning of this Harry Potter rewatch, that the biggest problem with the first movie is that it doesn't allude to this bigger plot. Well, this one has the opposite problem. It's just plot. There's no fun. There's no joy in it. It's just the plot just needs to happen. I think it's my least favorite, if I remember correctly. I'm going back. I have not gone through these since I've watched them. So, like, I'm gonna have to see if that's still true. But, yeah, Prisoner of Azkaban, bad. Don't like it. Next, The Boogeyman. This was the first movie I watched in June. And I don't think I mentioned this, but I made a rule for myself. I'm not allowed to read the description of a movie, but I can read my review. So, I gave it a 1 out of 10. My review is no. Oh wait, no. My review is no credit where it's due, no winners, no points. What? Okay, apparently I don't recommend The Boogeyman. That's a movie I could accidentally rewatch. I don't even remember who the main character was. I don't remember that at all. I wish I could come up with something to be like, oh yes, this. I don't know. I don't even know if I saw it. Yeah, it came out 2023, so I guess I saw it in theaters. Couldn't tell you. Don't see the Boogeyman, apparently. It's bad, and I don't like it, apparently. I might accidentally rewatch it someday. Shrek 2 is the next thing I watched, which is a great movie. It is exactly how you'd make a sequel to a movie, just enhancing the joy of the first one, but not trying to recapture the same sort of thing. Really enjoy Shrek 2. I think it's got a great villain. It's got a great story. The way they use the characters is strong. And it's weird because I feel like everyone agrees on that now. Where it used to be the case that Shrek 2 was kind of shit on, right? Like people hated it because they were like, "Oh, it's more Shrek the green guy." But now I feel like everyone is like team no, Shrek 2 has always been good. We just were too stupid to see it. Anyway, Shrek 2. That was a rewatch for me. I would recommend. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I'm going to say this is probably my favorite Harry Potter movie, if I remember correctly. Yeah, because this is the one where they're it's because it's the one with the Goblet of Fire. I like games, board games, that sort of thing. If I showed you this room, you'd see board games and that sort of thing everywhere. Um, so Goblet of Fire is literally just I don't know, like a competition. It's like Survivor, but for Harry Potter. At least that's the part that I care about. There is other movie around it, I'm sure, but I just like the bit where they're like, "We gotta make you fight a dragon," and oh, look at this crazy maze. That's what I want. Um, it kind of harkens back to the original sort of like childlike wonder, but we're at that point in the series where everything is really starting to take a more grim turn because the audience is maturing and they want to mature with their audience. Um, and I appreciate that. I can understand that. Um, and I think this is the way to still keep that childlike whimsy by having it's like here's the Dumbledore games or whatever it's called. But I did, yeah, I like that one. Next, I watched John Mulaney's Baby J. I don't know why, man. I don't know anything about John Mulaney, but apparently I watched Oh Hello on Broadway, his Broadway show, and Baby J. So I guess I know something about John Mulaney. He starts off the show by saying like something about he's like, well, this is awkward, huh? Like, is he gonna talk about it? And throughout the show, he talks about like going to rehab and stuff. But I've heard that there's more to the story than just rehab. I don't know. And I'm not here to talk about John Mulaney. I don't care about John Mulaney. He was funny. It was pretty funny. Next, Mulholland Drive. I love weird movies. As you can tell just from everything that I have mentioned so far, I love me a weird movie. And Mulholland Drive is certainly the proto uh, weirdo cinema, right? Like before, like we started having very normal weird movies, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, that can get such mainstream appeal that it can win Best Picture. Like before we got to that point, the weirdos were all watching Mulholland Drive, and I really appreciate that. I really liked it. Um, it's it's kind of strange. I mean, it's very strange. Um, I don't necessarily like connect to it. I'm not quite like at the point where I want to rewatch it yet. But there could come a point in my life where it becomes my favorite movie. Does that make any sense at all? But I could literally, like right now, it's like an 8 out of 10. I liked it a lot. But it could be a 10 out of 10 in like 7 years. Does that make sense? It's good. I liked it. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is the one where they assemble the Avengers to beat the bad guys because of they've taken over the Ministry of Magic. I may I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I gave it a 4, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm telling you that was something that was in the back of my mind. I was like, I want to do this with very little prep, very little setup. Um, but I'm so worried about talking about the Harry Potter movies because people are going to be so upset at me when they hear what I have to say. I'm so sorry, guys. Let's move on. Uh, then I watched After the Rehearsal. What did I put something for my review for this. I remember. Oh yeah, you watched this movie because you want to watch Ingmar Bergman. I watch this movie because I have an unhealthy obsession with theater. We are not the same. This is true. This is exactly accurate. It's an Ingmar Bergman movie who, any film people that are at least aware of the name Ingmar Bergman. Most even film people haven't seen this because it's kind of dry. Um, it's another movie of people talking in a room, which is my favorite genre of film. And it's a guy about a you know director talking to his new muse slash co-star, and but his her mother used to be that for him, and so I don't know. It sounds more thoughtful than it is, but it's really very simple. And the simplicity is good sometimes. It's not long either. I think it's like less than an hour and a half. Yeah, and I found myself with a cup of coffee, and I just sat down and watched it and just went, yeah, that's nice. Like that was like a warm hug, just a nice film, nice film. Shit. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince is a movie about Harry Potter and he is the Half-Blood Prince, I think. Why did I give this one a 7? I don't remember anything about it. Yeah, I remember watching it and going, wow, that was much better than I remembered it being, but now going back to it, I just could not tell you, man. It has a lot to do with things, and that stuff is important. And whew, great. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is fine. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 is a good conclusion film. It's no Return of the King. But it is good. It is, like, if you are a big fan of Harry Potter, I could see getting very emotional about saying goodbye to these characters, and it does feel very conclusive, which I feel like modern movies really don't want to be as conclusive as this movie is. But this one doesn't, like, set up for anything besides, oh, we see, like, Harry's kids, like, we see, potential future there, but it doesn't, like, set anything up. It says this is the end of this story. That's it. And I do appreciate that. And I feel like we're all kind of tired of that in like the Star Wars verse, right? Like the keep bringing back characters that we've seen too much of. Like just so tired of it. Whereas in this, their adventures are over. There's nothing more. We have seen these characters from when they were babies to when they are full adults married with children. We're done with these characters, and that's great. So I did like it. I thought it was very good conclusion for the Harry Potter series. Toy Story 2. This is also a rewatch for me. Nothing new here, but yeah, I like for sure the way that it tells the story. I remember actually really hating when I was a kid because it's just sort of it's sort of a step down from the first one, I think. Because this one they have to like go somewhere. It's closer to like Ocean's 11 than it is Toy Story 1. Like it's a heist movie almost, like wrapped into a children's film. And I really get into weird genre things like that. So, watching them try to like, find where Woody's being held and then break in, and like the adventure to get there is like this harrowing thing. And once they find Woody, for him to be like, no, I don't want to go. It's cool and good. And yeah, Toy Story 2 is okay, as they say. That one time. Asteroid City. Oh, man, I just got through the Harry Potter, and now I'm gonna lose even more people. I hate Wes Anderson. I hate him. I've never seen a Wes Anderson movie that I like, and I've seen pretty much all of the big ones except for I haven't seen Rushmore, and I haven't seen French Dispatch. But I've seen Grand Budapest. I saw it in theaters even. I've seen Fantastic Mr. Fox. I've seen Moonrise Kingdom. I've seen the big ones. And Asteroid City, I think, had the best chance to win me over. One, because I love small towns. Two, I love aliens. I love an alien abduction kind of story. And three, aesthetically, I was actually on board for this one. I thought that, most of his movies, I'm like, does it need to be like shot like this? And when I see like the kind of small town where there might not be a single person who actually lives there, but it is like a truck stop town on the way to somewhere else, that seemed like the perfect place to have like a miniature village as a starting point. But I did not think it was good. It had a lot of, it's one of those, it's it's the kind of movie that it is the kind of book I like to read, where it's like it goes off out of its way to tell you this is all meaningless. We're not getting anywhere. And it's not about where we're getting to, it's about where we are or what we're currently experiencing. Why did we need to have 100 celebrities to try to tell that story? He's tired of me talking about it too, aren't you? I think that Wes Anderson, if he toned back the need for celebrity in his movie and focused more on the stories he wanted to tell, then I feel like he'd probably resonate more with me. But I just don't want to see these people. I don't want to see famous people talking without any enunciation in their voices. I'm sorry. I don't want to be a hater. I try to bring positivity. I try not to talk about negative about things that I don't feel really strongly negative about. But unfortunately, Wes Anderson is that thing for me. I can't listen to him. By the way, we have now moved into July, which I believe is my biggest month. Okay, so let's go. Next thing I watched in July was Lady Snowblood. This is the movie that influenced Kill Bill. And by influenced, I mean it was Kill Bill directly ripped it off in pretty much every respect. At least Kill Bill Volume 1 is basically exactly Lady Snowblood. So if you like Kill Bill Volume 1, you will definitely enjoy Lady Snowblood. It is the origins, including it's not just in like the visual thing. In fact, a lot of the visuals are very different, but in the story of like, this is a story about revenge. Just no questions asked. The revenge is what the film rests on. I do think it kind of struggled a little bit in its final act, because again, this is something else that Kill Bill did, where it's like it kind of has an ending, and then it's like, but we have one last big thing we need to do. In Kill Bill, it's okay, now we got to go kill Bill. In this one, it goes into like this big final set piece, and I'm just like, I feel like we got to find the conclusive ending earlier. So Lady Snowblood, it's good if you like Kill Bill Volume 1. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. Raiders of the Lost Ark, let's go. Love Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's My second favorite Indiana Jones movie after Last Crusade. I feel like everyone is gonna it's gonna be between Raiders and Last Crusade, and psychopaths who enjoy the second one the most. Are you okay? Are you? Do you want me to call someone? Obviously, Raiders of the Lost Ark is awesome. I was blown away watching it because I watched it with my girlfriend, and she had never seen it before. And I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh, you got to see this part. But I was like, oh man, great scene. Oh, great scene. Oh, this is a great scene. Oh, this is a great scene. And I was like, man, I've become one of those people, but only in this movie. In every other movie, I could just sit there quietly and just like let them formulate their own opinions, whoever I'm there with. But in this movie, I was like, oh man, wait till you see this. Oh, this part's so cool. And I didn't realize how much I liked that movie. But it just rolls every moment. There's, I think that like every time I'm watching it, I think that there's like some boring bits that I'm forgetting about. Nope, it just goes. It's nonstop. I also watched Scott Pilgrim versus the World as a rewatch. I really, really love this movie. I'm a huge Edgar Wright fan. Always have been, always will be. Minus last night in Soho. We'll talk about that later. But Scott Pilgrim, I think, is really great. As someone who grew up in geek culture, the first time I originally watched it, I had burned it had to burn it to a disc that I found on like online, and I wasn't able to play the file, so I burned it onto a disc. So somewhere in my house, I have a torrented version of it, which was someone's video camera watching it or something like that. I mean, I didn't do that. I'm making a joke. Obviously, I didn't do that. For the record. But anyway, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World speaks to me on a very personal level. Not because I really connect with Scott or anything like that, but just because it's such a love letter to all us geeks growing up in the early 2000s. I think it really does resonate with us. No Hard Feelings is what I watched next. Jennifer Lawrence returned to the big screen. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I do really like these kind of comedies, weirdly enough. It seems kind of out of character for me, because as you notice, a lot of my movies that I really enjoy are like weird and auteur cinema, like bullshit. But No Hard Feelings, I don't know. I can get down for a movie that's just like, just jokes. Now I know that I gave it like a 3 out of 10, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. It just doesn't, all it is jokes. They're funny jokes, but if it's got nothing else going for it, I'm not gonna give it like, oh yeah, it's good. It's not good, but it is funny. So I did like it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is pretty good. I don't know. I don't really want to go too deep into Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, to be honest with you. It's long, it's boring. This video is long and boring. I hope it's not boring. I am doing my best, I swear to you. I'm not even a video person. I don't know why I'm trying to do this. Like, this is taking up my entire day to do. After this, I have to go to rehearsal and talk for hours. This is such a bad idea. What am I doing? So anyway, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's good if you're interested in the Manson family. When I initially watched it, I was not aware of the Manson family basically at all, which is surprising to a lot of people, especially in the world that we live in now, where everyone knows about all the serial killers all the time. But when I watched it, I really wasn't aware of it at all. So all of like the subtle things of like, oh, Charles Manson is like there in the background, and he's talking to Sharon Tate, but like I didn't know who Sharon Tate was. I didn't know who Charles Manson was. On the rewatch, I did, so I liked it a lot more. And I had read the book, which I feel like actually is a cool companion to this movie. I would recommend the book if you want more out of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's not the same. All this like Manson stuff happens in about a paragraph 30 pages into the book or something, maybe like 60 pages. Anyway, it's totally different. So I would recommend the book. Um, Next, I watched Turning Red. I appreciate when Pixar does something different. Pixar, I feel like, has really just been hitting stinker after stinker recently. And Turning Red was a good change of pace. Not to say that it was good, but it was certainly better than The Incredibles 2. You know, animation wise, I'm kind of adverse to how it. I don't know. It almost feels like it's pulling from almost like anime more than it is like cartoons, but it feels cartoony. Even though it's like 3D animated, I feel like there's a lot of just like there's just like an anime-esque sort of feeling to like the punctuated, larger than life moments, and that just doesn't really resonate with me at all. So I liked that it was an actual. It felt like a Pixar story, right? They haven't made a Pixar story because the meme goes, what if this had feelings? What if that had feelings? What if blah 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 blah? This isn't a movie about what if this had feelings. It's like this is about being a girl growing up, and like I think that's cool. Like I think that's better, right? Like similar to like Luca, right? I think I've watched Luca this year as well, so I'll talk about that when I get there. But I really liked. I really appreciate Pixar taking a swing. You know, the next movie I watched, different end of the ballpark here, is I See You. If I remember correctly, this is the movie where it's there. This is the one where there's a first half of the movie, and then the movie rewinds to the beginning and tries to recontextualize everything by following a different character through the situation. In theory, that's good. Honestly, the theory of it is why I gave it a 2 out of 10 and not a 1, because it does have soul to it. It does have a concept. I just think it's amateur. Like what the way it's executed, the way it's thrown together, really felt it felt cheap and easy and boring. Just not. I don't think I need to worry about the ICU stands coming out for me here. But if you are out there, I understand what you like about the movie. But to me, I don't think that they really gave had a competent enough, like, I don't know, there's an oomph missing from it. There's just like this momentum that it needed that it just didn't have. I also watched 12 Angry Men, which I love this. Oh my gosh, I love 12 Angry Men. Again, people in a room having a conversation. It's always going to be a selling point for me. Because, I mean, most of those are based off plays, and that's what I grew up really enjoying. So, 12 Angry Men, not surprising at all how good that was. I could watch it right now. I could watch it 100 times. It's one of the best character dramas I've ever seen, where you just put a bunch of people you don't even know their names of, you just know their juror number, and they walk around and try to figure this out. If you made this movie in the modern day, you probably would be really caught up on like solving the mystery of what happened, but more they're just trying to prove that the evidence that they have is not sufficient. That's what the movie is. Just it's not sufficient. Not necessarily here's how it was done, and it was actually this person. That's not important or really like part of it. It's just like and learning about the people and their biases, like, and it's just so interesting in the way that the people that you think are like good normal people have these underlying evil qualities in them was just fascinating. I don't know. I mean, big surprise here. 12 Angry Men. It's a good movie. Crazy. later that night, this is a weird double feature, I watched Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest. I love Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest. I think people are when they're talking about like, well, the first Pirates is really good, but Pirates 2 and 3, well, that's really when the whole series started to fall off, and they're okay, but they're kind of their own thing. No, 2 and 3 are when the movies start to get really good. Beckett, oh my gosh, what a villain! And I feel like Johnny Depp laid his groundwork for his character so well in the first one that putting him in this even bigger adventure, and now it's not just about adventure. You're going against the worst possible enemy. It's not Davy Jones. It's the British. Like it's so cool because I love that you have the three different sides to this. You have the British, you have the pirates, and you have the evil pirates, and to put it all together in that big final scene on the island there where you had Norrington, Will, and Jack banging swords at each other in a very symbolic and cool way. How do you not love this movie, man? So freaking good. It's also the wettest movie I've ever seen. I know I've gone on record to say that. It's so, like, everyone is just drenched for the entire movie. I don't know why, but it starts while it's pouring rain at a wedding. There's maybe two scenes in the entire movie where someone isn't, like, completely soaked in water. And yeah, they're pirates, but the first one, there's plenty of scenes where people aren't wet. And the third one, there's plenty of scenes where people aren't wet. But the second one, everyone's wet. They go to a prison. It's like at the very beginning of the movie that you go to a prison in the middle of the ocean, and the waves can't get up all that high, and yet everything is wet. It's so wet. Why? I love it. Then I saw the Super Mario Brothers movie. I watched this very drunk. Very, very drunk. I'll be honest with you. Because I watched it with a friend. And he and I decided to make a drinking game out of it. And the worst thing, because we didn't, neither of us had seen it before, so we were like, let's come up with a game. And we're like, well, take a shot every time someone hits a question block. I have nothing but regrets for that. But needless to say, Super Mario Bros. Movie was an interesting experience, albeit an unmemorable one, because I don't remember it. But I remember sitting there thinking to myself, if we take Donkey Kong and the whole Kong army out of this, has anything changed? And the answer is no. But I'll say it. I mean, it was way better than I thought it was going to be. I had no high expectations for it. I don't like an adaptation of a video game as a movie. I don't think that's a good idea. They're two different mediums, and especially when it's something like, okay, the plumber gets the princess. That's not a movie, you know? That's boring. And they did a pretty good job, actually, of putting a story in there. And they should have cast anyone but Chris Pratt. But Charlie Day was a good cast for Luigi. I'll give him that. Yeah, so Super Mario Bros. Movie. Liked it more than I thought I would, but whatever. Okay, now we skip forward a few days here, and we get to the trilogy. So the first thing that me and my friend watched for the trilogy was something called The Prom Pact. This was a movie that we knew we were going to watch, and we knew we were going to enjoy for its truly terribleness, and it was truly terrible. You know, there's nothing special here. I think it's got the guy from Zombies in it. I love to see him. But yeah, I'm trying to remember anything from it. I was trying to read my review, and it's just talking about how the writer's strike isn't going to influence the production of those kind of movies. So topical, huh? Uh, yeah, Prom Pact, thumbs down. Um, the next movie we watched was Prom Night, which was a slasher movie that takes place on prom night, and it plays out exactly as you'd expect. So if you're in the business that I'm in, which is watching bad movies with your friends, um, it's a good warm up movie, I think, because it'll get your banter organs flowing so that you can start bantering back and forth about nothing. Um, really boring. Accepted is the next movie we watched, and this movie is oh, this was this the direct ripoff of Superbad that came out before? Yes, this movie came out just before Superbad did, and yet it feels exactly like Superbad's ugly brother. It is so like the jokes are not as good as Superbad, but the characters are kind of similar with similar dynamics and it tries to hit kind of similar points. And it like you would think almost that Superbad took a lot of its influence from that movie, but the script for Superbad was written like a decade before, if not more. Um, so I have no idea how that. It's like when Ants and Bugs Life came out at the same time. It's like it feels like these had to have been in production way before this, and yet somehow they've made like very similar movies. So it's just it's not good if that's what you're asking, which you are. Um, but yeah, don't watch Accepted. Watch Superbad, obviously. Minions: The Rise of Gru. Um, this was actually the first movie in the trilogy's history that we had stopped watching halfway through. In fact, we found out later we had stopped watching 10 minutes in. Because it was just so obnoxious, so hard to watch. Um, it's for kids, and kids don't mind annoying noises and you know kind of simple animation, but we came all this to say this is a redemption story. We watched Minions: Rise of Gru, and it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. I mean, it's a 1 out of 10, but it's not as bad as the first 10 minutes of it. So has that going for it at least. Then speaking of, the final movie we watched that day for the trilogy was 80 for Brady. I kind of liked it. I We even took a picture in front of the 80 for Brady stand up that they had at the movie theater when it came out, and because we were like, this is going to be so hilariously bad. Who's going to watch this? It's not even going to be good. And actually, it's pretty funny. And it actually, like, the story is kind of heartwarming and the performances are solid. So I don't know what more you could want from 80 for Brady. I don't really know who it's made for because it's made for, like, football moms. Like, but, like, old moms. Like, if you're, like, in your like 60s and so you grew up with like Jane Fonda and stuff, but you also like football, you'll love this movie. It's perfect for you. I'm not in the perfect demographic for it, but I could really appreciate that it is actually kind of fun, that it is much better than I thought it was going to be. Next thing I watched was oh my gosh, the sun has started to set. You can tell it's daylight savings time, huh? Because it's 4:15 and the sun has started to set. Um, are you changing your position? Next thing I watched was Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. I don't need to talk about this, right? Here's all I'll say about it. If you haven't watched it, this is your sign to go see it. You've been putting it off for too long. All of your friends have told you to watch it, and you haven't. I know it's long, but it's so good. And you don't have to watch the other ones after that if you're not into it. But I wager that you will be. I bet you're going to watch this movie and you're going to say, damn, why did I put that off for so long? And then you might put off watching the other ones for even longer, but at least you will have started watching the series. Or if you if it opens your third eye, you might end up watching all of them back to back to back. It's just a danger I gotta warn you about. But if you haven't seen The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, you don't even need to watch the extended edition if you don't want to. They're really good. But you don't have to. Watch it. You owe it to yourself. You've been going through a lot recently. And you need The Fellowship of the Ring. Next up was Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. This was a rewatch for me. I remember it's like a weird movie. It's in a dream place in my brain where I know every part of this movie. I've even dressed up like Beetlejuice for an event. So like I'm very familiar with it, and yet I always feel like I'm missing a chunk of it when I'm watching it. Like it just happens so fast, and the plot is so loosey goosey. But I mean, I'm not gonna complain. It's some of the most fun filmmaking that Tim Burton's ever done, and it's so creative and unique. And they shouldn't remake it or make this weird sequel that they are. What the hell? Who wants that? But Beetlejuice, it's great. I highly recommend. The next thing I watched, and yes, this is in the same month, was the Super Mario Bros. Movie a second time. Now you may ask yourself, Brian, you watched this movie earlier in the month, and you didn't really like it. Why would you watch it again? Well, I'll tell you. Because I was on an airplane, and desperate times call for desperate measures, because I hate flying. Freaks me out. Every time I'm on an airplane, I am in my own head. I think we're gonna die every time there's a little bump in the movie. And you know what's great? Bright lights, flashing colors, characters you remember, and really like a joke a minute that aren't particularly funny, but like it takes your focus. And so like it is a time travel movie, because once it's over, you're gonna be like, oh, that's it? So yeah, I watched it again. No, my opinion didn't get better on it. But now I remember what happens in the movie, and you know what I was right about? Kong Army does nothing. So, the drunk Brian. Okay. Last movie that I watched for July, very similar to the Super Mario Bros. Movie, was Tar. That's a joke. If you haven't seen it, it's a movie with Cate Blanchett just being a conductor. It's kind of got a little Whiplash genes, if you liked Whiplash, but it's not Whiplash. Like that needs to be made abundantly clear. If you liked Whiplash, you're not going to necessarily like this. It's not one of those. But it's kind of like when you look at your friend's kid and they look similar to their parents. That's kind of what this is. So it's engaging. It's a little lengthy, and cinematically, it's not all that interesting. But the character is fascinating. The subtleties in her performance really bring it. Like that's all you're looking for, is you're just watching her face as she gives you literally nothing, and then you see just a twinge of something, and you go, "Ooh, what's up with that?" And that's what we shoot for. All right, we have made it through July. Am I gonna make it to rehearsal on time? Anyway, this is weird. Okay, so I did the Barbenheimer experience on July 1st. I went start with Barbie, end with Oppenheimer. Seemed like the right way to go about it. And my thoughts here are going to be a little controversial. I'm going to warn you about that ahead of time. So don't shoot the messenger on this. Um, Barbie, I thought was good. I actually liked Barbie quite a bit. I thought it might be a little bit obvious and preachy, um, but it wasn't at all. Actually, I could see it any day of the week. It's such a joyful, positive movie. I think that's what I get tired of. If a movie has a message, it has to like push the negativity. This movie pushes nothing but positivity, and it's just phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. It's not at all what I expected, and the fact that the good people at Hasbro think for a second that because this was successful, a Magic 8 Ball movie is going to work is idiotic. It has nothing to do with Barbies. That's not what sold it. It's not because everyone's nostalgic for having Barbies. That's just a part of it. Also, no one's nostalgic for having a Magic 8 Ball. Who do you think you are? um, and then Oppenheimer. It's a movie I did not like. I hate being like the super dissenting opinion, but I just did not like it. Killian Killian Murphy. I don't really know him from much. I haven't seen like Peaky Blinders or anything. I thought he was really good in it, but I I let me justify this a little bit before you get too angry at me. Um, Biopics tend to not resonate with me. Your movie doesn't need to be based on any kind of real life event for me to think this is important and meaningful. Um, I actually think that the man himself and the that part of history is fascinating. This guy making something that he knew was potentially the end of the world, but for him to need to make it anyway is really riveting to me. I don't really necessarily need hours of court drama or setup into that. This could have been an hour and a half long movie, and and just like a really tight film that follows the man and not the story. I don't know. I wish I could justify this more, but when I got, maybe it's because I had just finished watching such a pleasant, joyful movie of the Barbie movie, but stepping into Oppenheimer, I just felt like it just felt weak. It felt like the lesser film, and it shouldn't. Those two movies should not be compared because they're not even remotely in the same ballpark. But unfortunately, culturally, it's inescapable at this point to put Barbie and Oppenheimer together. That's all I'll say on it. Um, I don't want to talk more negativity about it because I know that people have said that this is their favorite Nolan movie of all time, and I respect that. I don't think your opinions are any less because mine are so vastly different than yours. So let's just be civil about this. It just didn't work for me. Let's just call it that. Next thing I watched was Ajiri: The Wrath of God. I watched this because that same friend gave me a subscription to the Criterion channel, and so we were kind of assigning movies to each other back and forth. It's really cool, actually. They have a lot of like interesting movies. I know they just put like a bunch of Hitchcock movies on there, which I'm excited to see because I haven't really seen anything by him besides The Birds. But Ajiri: The Wrath of God is this interesting story about Spaniards. I think they're Spaniards looking for El Dorado, and it's one man slowly gaining power in this group of people. It has one of the most chilling endings I've ever seen for a character, and it's cool. It takes a long time to get going, so it's not like everyone's got to see this. And also, I'm kind of adverse to subtitles, not because I think that movies should be dubbed, but just because I have a hard time looking up and down between the two. Like, just I guess maybe I'm dyslexic, like very mildly or something like that. But my eyes cannot read and watch what's happening at the same time. So, and this movie is in Spanish, I believe. It's like Spanish or Portuguese, something like that. Um, and I wish I wasn't like this, but that always kind of hurts my experience. Unless the movie's exceptional, like something like Parasite, obviously that's an exception. Alien. This is not a rewatch for me. This is the first time I'd ever seen Alien. I thought this was awesome. I thought this was really, really, really neat. I love the monster. I love how it's put together. I'm gonna do you the favor that everyone did for me and somehow not spoil some of these crazy things that happen in this movie. I've even seen Prometheus, and people didn't spoil for me what happens in Alien in terms of certain characters. If you know, you know. In fact, I bet everyone knows. But somehow, no one got that information to me. Not one person told me about the big twists and stuff in Alien. And because of that, I got to watch it like it had just come out. And it was so good. I loved it. Sigourney Weaver. 10 out of 10. Holes is a rewatch for me and one of my favorite movies of all time. Not just for the nostalgia for it, though the nostalgia is strong with that one, but also because it has it has a magical realism element to it. It's got three not different plot lines, but three different timelines happening at once. Where it's like this was the past, this is the nearer past, and like this is the present. And watching like them seemingly disconnected, but then by the end all of the storylines seem to wrap into one, and it's got this like really just it's this magical sort of feeling to it. It's so good, man. If you haven't seen Holes in a minute, you gotta see Holes now. Holes is so good. Knock at the Cabin it was kind of cool too. A lot of people don't know this about me, but when I was in high school, I wrote a screenplay called The Religion of Dave, which was all about the end of the world and just like sort of like surviving it, but also like this one person who knows the world is ending and not really having any agency over it. So I've always been interested. Anytime like an end of the world sort of story like comes into play, those sort of things always resonate with me, just because of how much I've put into it in the past. And so Knock at the Cabin, I feel like for a lot of people this isn't gonna be a winner, but I liked it a lot. I thought performances were a little bit weak, but story wise, I found it consistently engaging. You know, was it M Night Shyamalan or was it just similar to an M Night Shyamalan thing? I don't remember. Regardless, it was really like a great. If it was M Night Shyamalan, it's a great return to form. If it wasn't, that was a great, a great way to do his kinds of movies, at least his old kinds of movies. Then I watched They Clone Tyrone. This is a sleeper that I feel like a lot of people missed out on. This movie released on Netflix the same weekend as Barbenheimer. Big mistake. Don't do that. And so I feel like a lot of people just missed it. And then by the time that they found it, it had already been there long enough for people not to care. But this is so cool. Like this movie has some exceptional like performances in it, some great actors, and I feel like I'd recommend not looking up who's in it and just watching it. And just like if you enjoy like body snatcher sort of stories, you'll like this one. Also, if you like, man, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a cool energy to this movie, and it is such a blast. I loved it. I really did. Next up was F for Fake, which is a movie that had made by Orson Welles. That's who it was. My guy could read a phone book and make it interesting, um, and it has this crazy ending to it, which is kind of what it's most famous for. But it's more or less a documentary about like almost himself in a weird ways. At least that's kind of how I read into it because he does tell the story of himself and kind of how he got involved in um, movie making at all. So if that's interesting to you, I'd recommend checking it out. I this is again this is my selling point for the Criterion Channel. If that sounds interesting to you, you probably never would have heard of it, and I wouldn't have heard of it unless it was just there on a streaming service that said, "Hey, it's an Orson Welles movie that's kind of about like fraud." And you're like, "What?" Anyway, see it. It's good. National Treasured Book of Secrets. People are gonna be so mad at me because I gave Oppenheimer like a 1, and I gave National Treasure Book of Secrets a 7. I like a good movie that is just having a grand old time. And when you're making a movie where you're kidnapping a president and you're escaping through tunnels and there's a secret book, and I just loved it. I just really loved it. I both the National Treasure movies, I often like to put on something to go to sleep to, and I found that I had to stop doing that with the National Treasure movies because it just like turned me into a 12-year-old again. For both of them, I just go, wow, like look at that, look at the gold, wow, look at the fire. It's just I want to call it a guilty pleasure, but I feel no guilt. They're great. I love them. Tick Tick Boom. I was so surprised how long it took me to watch this movie. It had been on my list forever, and it took until I had actually gone and I was spending. I was house sitting for my parents, and me and my girlfriend were just looking for something to watch, and we're like, oh yeah, we'd been meaning to see that, so we watched it. Whew. Andrew Garfield, man, I was really sold on him from like The Social Network, and then he like sealed the deal with Under the Silver Lake. But Tick Tick Boom, he can do no wrong, right? Like my God, like he's so talented, and the story that it's telling is so perfect for right now, and it's a biopic that I actually really really liked because it's also a musical, but not. It doesn't rest its laurels on needing to be a musical, right? That's what I'm for. I just want to see a movie that is that uses itself for its own purposes. What? Oh my gosh! How long have I been going? See, this is why when those crazy video essayists and stuff, they don't show their face, and they put in cuts and stuff like that, so you can do it over a course of multiple days or hours at least. You don't put up a clock and sit in front of a camera to try to prove that you're doing this in one sitting, because it's really tiring and you start to say stupid stuff. So let's get back into it. Sorry, I did not wake him. Somehow that didn't wake him. Let's keep going. Next, I watched The Demon House. This is a Zach Bagans documentary about a house. I gave this a 2 out of 10, which may surprise a lot of people because it is really bad. It's not a good documentary. It ends with Zach Bagans. Is it Bagans or Bagans? Regardless, it ends with Zach in the house, wearing his silly sunglasses, punching at the air, going, "Hey, ghost, if you're gonna get me, why don't you go get me?" And everything is so fake. But there is this part early on where I saw this glimmer of a story start to unfold. A story that he did not chase down, but he should have. Where he starts to discuss how the demon house, this house that's in this impoverished neighborhood, as soon as the news cameras start showing up, everyone's got a story about the demon house. And you can't really blame the people for wanting in on this, because this is like the area that this is in are people that are in need of money, right? And when news stories, like news outlets and stuff, are looking for stories, and you have a story to tell, you'll get paid for that, for just coming up with something there. And I think that's fascinating, especially in the ghost hunting world. There's got to be so much of that, and I had never even really considered that as like an angle. There's it's just so interesting. And he followed it for about 10 minutes, and then he found someone who said, "No, but there could be something really going on there." And that was good enough for him to say, "Okay, well then everyone's telling the truth, or let's find out for ourselves." It's bad, but it got my brain thinking of an interesting story. And so I'm not saying my ratings are fair. They're very emotional, and they're based off how I feel. So it's a 2, whatever. Killer Clowns from Outer Space is another rewatch for me. Love Killer Clowns. It's they're so cool watching those. I could watch those clowns just patrolling around all day, every day, and I would never complain. Um, and the movie isn't like very well structured. I think it kind of drags, which is weird because it's, you know, it's an alien invasion movie, but with clowns running around. You'd think that that couldn't drag, but it does. It does have a little bit of a pacing problem once you get deeper, probably like an hour into the movie. But then it comes right back. The big conclusion is super worth it. Then I rewatched Barbie. Yeah, I would say I didn't gain anything from a rewatch, but it was so good I would do it again. I just wanted to see it again. I felt exactly the same way that I did the first time. It's just fun, just a good movie. Would recommend. Then I rewatched The Hateful Eight, which is probably maybe my least favorite Tarantino movie. I would say it's close. I feel like this he wrote a stage play and accidentally made a movie out of it. It's a play. It'd be much better as a play, in fact. Um, as a movie, it's pretty good. Some really strong performances, but as a whodunit fan, he did the worst thing that I think a whodunit could do. I don't know how else to say this without spoiling this, so I'm gonna have my hand up while I'm spoiling. If you don't want to hear spoilers, I'll put it down once I'm done. You can't have everyone in on it. You just can't. If everyone is a bad guy, then it's just it takes away all the fun of like trying to solve it, because if everyone's in on it, then it's like, okay, well then all the clues point to different people are all true. There's no red herrings, there's no adventure there. So it did lack a lot there. Welcome back. If you were tuned off for that. But yeah, Hateful Eight, it's still good. It's, you know, like with he's such a great filmmaker that like it's like he talks about in his movies about Hattori Hanzo, right? You don't compare a Hattori Hanzo sword against every other like sword ever made. You compare a Hattori Hanzo sword after the other Hattori Hanzo swords, right? It's still really good as a movie. It's just far from my favorite Tarantino. Next thing I watched was Talk to Me, which was that movie. I don't know their names, but it was apparently made by some YouTubers. There was that movie that I had mentioned earlier, that was called I See You. This is the movie I wanted I See You to be. Not because they're similar at all. They're entirely different stories, totally different things. But it was made by filmmakers who had never done this before. You know, they come from a YouTube background. I'm not sure what YouTube channel they are, but they have a YouTube background. But there is so much energy and so much oomph to this movie that it's hard not to just be fully fully in. And there's some horrific stuff in there that I was so surprised. And it's got such a great like metaphor for like drug use in there that I think is like really impactful and very intentional. And it's great that a movie has like a message like that, which you just don't get movies like that without ever anyone saying it, right? Like it, not necessarily drug use, I guess, but just like about how addiction can happen. But it seems specific to sort of drug use because, like you try this for, because your friend brought it, and then, it's fine, but then you want to try it again, you try it again, and then before you know it, you're doing anything you can to try to get more. It's cool, it's good, it's well done. Ricky Jay and his 52 assistants is a magic special by Ricky Jay, if you can imagine it. In magic, there's a term called patter, which is just like how you speak while you're doing your trick. This is the master of patter right here. He can just ramble and ramble and ramble. He's got a similar sort of thing, even a similar look to like Orson Welles, where he'll just like speak sweet nothings into your ear. And I know it's weird to give a magic special a 5 out of 10 because again, for me, that's like this is a good movie. I would definitely see again. But no, it's really engaging, and he's not trying to change the world with this special, but it is a truly phenomenal special. So highly recommend it. Next, I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is freaking tight. I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is so unwielding. When you're watching it, the pace of the movie is just this non-stop, just like beating you down. It's like you're being waterboarded by a movie, but it's in Texas. You're just like you're just like hoping for a moment of peace where someone's not screaming or where there's not like some really stressful thing happening, and it just refuses to give it to you. And the thing is that the idea and concept is not all that interesting, right? It's a normal slasher sort of situation. All these teens get caught up in something they shouldn't be, and a man wearing a mask attacks them with a chainsaw. That's not interesting. But the way it's done, it keeps making you think that you might have this moment of peace and taking it away from you. It's like it is like being waterboarded, or like having a washcloth over your, like a wet washcloth over your mouth, breathing in and just trying to get a full breath, but you just can't quite get it. That's what that movie feels like. It's very good. Highly recommend it. Okay, we are out of August, and we are now moving into September. September 1st, I watched The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Why, you ask? I don't know. I like a Western. And I guess that's kind of it. And I do think it's cool. Like I've seen some really cool reviews for it. I think that's kind of what I like most about it, which is weird. Normally, I like to have a lot of my own sort of feelings and thoughts about a movie when I'm watching it. But Ballad of Buster Scruggs, I think, benefits from how people talk about how even though it's a collection, if you're not familiar with it, it's a collection of stories in the West. And all of them are vastly different from each other. Like the first one is like a musical thing about like this kind of psychopathic guy. And then there's one that is like a traveling circus act where there's no dialogue, except for this like running monologue, because the act that they're touring the West with is this man who doesn't have any arms or legs, and he does like, is it called like oration, where you just like speak monologues to people to like make money. And it's a story about like his relationship with the guy who is using him to make money. And I thought that was really cool. And then there's another one about like all these people in a stagecoach going somewhere. Or another one about a guy who is mining, or he's looking for gold, during the gold rush. Like every story is very, very different, and I thought it was kind of good. It varied. It's one of those movies that's kind of hard to say, oh, this one, like the whole thing was a 5 out of 10. No, there is some like 8 out of 10s in there, and there's like a couple 2 out of 10s in there too. So I just gave it a 5 because that felt more right. All right, this is big for me because we are finally on the last page of my letterbox. So, yeah, let me get another drink here. Let's finish this thing out. Okay, I watched this on the same day, actually, as Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Was Don't Worry, Darling. I think it was kind of underrated because I think people were expecting it to be more an auteur cinema kind of movie, and it's not. It is really not. It's schlocky. It's a Stepford Wives sort of thing. It's very much in that space. But that's exactly what I was looking for, and so I got exactly what I wanted. There is some like problems with acting, I think, in the movie. There's this weird thing to it that I feel like a disconnect between the performances, where some people thought that this was a really hokey movie, and some people thought it was very serious. And so I feel like if there was someone there to make sure that sorry for doing that. If there was someone there who could make that movie feel more coherent, it would help the movie a lot. But I thought, for what it was, I thought it was good. I liked it. I had a good time, at the very least. Then I watched The Power of the Dog. This one's really going to surprise people, but I didn't like it at all. I really... My biggest flaw with it, I think, is Benedict Cumberbatch. A lot of people loved his performance in this, but I really did not. It felt kind of bad watching his performance. And this is going to be another spoiler thing, because I don't know another way to go through this. I guess it's not necessarily a spoiler because it's not technically... I'll put up the spoiler hand anyway. Spoilers. Okay, I didn't like Benedict Cumberbatch in this because he was supposed to be playing this character who is closeted gay in the West, right? But he has to put on this masculine facade, masculine facade to like to be in charge of these people. The biggest problem, though, I don't think he sold that for a half second. When I was watching him there, I'm like, he looks so small and so soft and so like weak, like, which is fine if his character wasn't supposed to be this burly cowboy who like he's such a danger that this mom doesn't even want her kid talking to him. Like he seems kind of like, I don't know, like weak. He doesn't seem like he really has that much power or say. So I hated his performance. I thought like he was probably going for that a little bit to show that maybe there's another reason why people don't like or not that they don't like him, but there's a reason why, like, I don't know. I wish I had a better way to put it, but his performance did not evoke to me strong, scary cowboy, but like, has like this tragic love story inside. That's not what it evoked to me. So I thought it was kind of terrible for that. Anyway, moving right along, I watched The Nice Guys for the first time. This is such a fun movie. Oh, so much fun. I think, because I had not seen Ryan Gosling. I don't think I watched anything from him last year. And so to watch the Barbie movie and this, oh my gosh, I've been in Ryan Gosling heaven. I think he's such a cool, interesting kind of guy, and I really, really enjoyed him in The Nice Guys. So there's that. They Live. I watched this movie in theaters because they did like a re-release of it. But this was my first time seeing it. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought that um, the scene where they fight for like God knows how long was too much. I understand like there's a lot of like people have written essays about it and whatever, but come on, they did it because they cast two wrestlers and they wanted to have them wrestle. That's why they did it. I also think it's weird that the Obey brand, because obviously they're calling back to this, but like I feel kind of lied to. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I feel like they're calling us all sheeple, and that kind of sucks. So anyway, They Live is good, but that made me feel gross. Interview with a Vampire is a movie I watched because I just did a production of Dracula, and one of the things that the director mentioned, he said, "I want less Bela Lugosi, more Interview with a Vampire." And so I was like, okay, let's see Interview with a Vampire then. And it's fine. It's I could definitely see the proto Twilightness of the story. Um, I just wish that it was more overtly gay, if that makes sense. Like if you're because the movie itself doesn't want it like it wants to be, but it like won't lead into it. And I had to look it up afterwards. I hate a movie that can't just commit to what it's obviously about. And they were like, yeah, we tried to tone it back a little bit. When you've got the story of two guys who are kind of like budding friendship together, who are raising a vampire child together. This feels kind of like a love story, and for some reason, the movie like goes out of its way to say, "Oh, it's not," when it very clearly is. So, don't make your movie about something and then say it's not about that. Is that fair? Like, can we all agree on that? Next up is The Facility. Or, sorry, not The Facility, The Faculty. I always say that too. This is a Robert Rodriguez. Is it Robert? Yeah, it's Robert Rodriguez movie, and I've always been a fan of Spy Kids. Again, I just love childlike wonder cinema. Like, I think it's delightful. And The Faculty is perfect for like teenage wonder. It's again another sort of like body snatchers story. In fact, they literally go out of their way to mention that this is a body snatchers story, but it's also a slasher, and it's in high school, and it's a Robert Rodriguez movie, so there's fun, body horror stuff, which is just cool and good, and I can't recommend it enough. I really, if you love like slashers or you just love Robert Rodriguez, you can't go wrong with The Faculty. It is super fun. Haunted Mansion. This is not the Eddie Murphy one. This is the new one. Is bad. It's really bad, actually. As someone who's worked at Disneyland, as someone who has always been a fan of Haunted Mansion, there's a point where it was like my personality was Haunted Mansion. I they didn't do me any service here with this. It is people say like, yeah, it's a little fan servicey. Like, as a fan, no, it wasn't. It was like they mention a couple things from the ride, but they don't like do anything with it. I honestly prefer the Eddie Murphy version. I'm not even lying. Like, I love Lakeith Stanfield. I really do. But this is not how you use him. He shouldn't be running around in Disney cheap remakes. Like, this almost felt like a live action Disney remake, which is the most damning thing I've ever said in my life. Even though it's not based off of a cartoon, it just has that. Remember how I talk about the soul scale? If it doesn't have a soul, it's a 1 star. This movie has no soul. It is flat. It's boring. It is not made by filmmakers. It is made by people who are trying to make money, and I can appreciate the hustle, but That does not make your movie good, and it doesn't make me respect it. So, you get a 1 out of 10. Next thing I watched was 8 Mile. 8 Mile is pretty good. Uh, it kind of feels like a biopic, and people have said it's like kind of loosely based off Eminem's life, but not really. So like I guess Eminem has like he's fine in the movie. I won't say he's bad, but his character he can only do one thing with the character, which is be kind of mad, right? He's got to be like kind of upset about the situation, but like kind of he knows he can do it, but he doesn't always believe in himself. But he always gives us the same damn expression the entire movie, and I just found it a little tiring. So it's not bad. If you'd like to see a movie that has Eminem in it and it's better than you think it's going to be, 8 Mile, not a bad pick. Django Unchained, potentially the best Western ever made. I'm going to say it. Even though it doesn't do a lot of the normal Western things, this is so good. There's I can't say one bad thing about it. Honest to God, it's Christoph Waltz at his best, Jamie Foxx is at his best, Leonardo DiCaprio at his best. Why don't we cast him as more villains? What are we doing casting him as all these like romanticized characters? He's so much better when he can just be a bad person. So Django Unchained, watch it. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Now you're gonna notice a trend here. I was decided weirdly to start rewatching Tarantino's movies, but starting at the end and working my way back. It's kind of interesting, right? So the next thing I watched was Inglourious Basterds, which is a lot of people's favorite Tarantino movie. Me, not so much. I really like it. Christoph Waltz is really what we're there for. I think that goes without saying. Brad Pitt is also really good in it. There's a couple other like pretty good performances as it goes, but as far as story wise, I'm not really in on the story until we get down to, first of all, the opening scene is obviously incredible. Then there's about an hour to an hour and a half of the movie I don't care about. And then there's the scene in the bar in the cellar, which is so good. Through the rest of the movie is so good. But there's this big old chunk that just takes up most of the movie. Who cares? It's so boring. Next up is Death Proof. Awesome movie. So freaking cool. This is the most underrated Tarantino movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It is a movie about a psychopathic serial killer. But more importantly, it's about how badass, what's her name? The Zoe something or other. How badass she is as a stunt woman. And we get to just see that at like full display in this movie. And there's some really cool dialogue in it. It's super fun, super engaging. This is the movie I've never seen a movie that's made me go more like yeah at the end of a movie than this. So if you want a movie that makes you do that, this is that movie. So watch Death Proof. You've probably never heard of it, I'd wager. Like he says to anyone, right? Like that's not a safe bet because anyone that's going to be mad at whatever, you don't know about Death Proof. You do. Okay, White Noise. I read the book before I saw the movie, and I weirdly thought that this was a pretty good adaptation of the movie, or of the book, which is weird because when I read the book, I was like, this is unadaptable, because it is. I talk about dreamlike things. This is the most dreamlike thing that I've ever read. It's that everyone talks in dream logic talk, so it is really interesting, and I think you'll know if you like it after about like 20 minutes. If you don't, it's not going to get better. It's not going to improve. It's not leading to something bigger. So like watch 20 minutes of it, and then decide if you want to finish it. Because if you do want to finish it, you'll probably like it. If you don't want to finish it, you're not going to like it. Like it's one of those simple as that. It doesn't pay off, you know. Oh my gosh, I forgot. This was the day where it's hard to call it a trilogy because we just watched through. We started movies at like 10 a.m. And we just watched all day. So the next thing we watched was a movie called, excuse me, The Slumber Party. This is Disney's version of The Hangover for kids, which is probably fine. I think, it feels kind of soulless to me. That's why I gave it a 1 out of 10. But if I was a kid and I really and I saw it, I'd probably be like, yeah, this is aspirational. It's like watching Superbad, but without all the griminess of Superbad, which takes away all the fun, by the way, because but if you're let's say you're like a kid, right? Like if you're 10, then Slumber Party is probably going to be better for you. When you turn 16, 17, then you'll probably enjoy Superbad a lot more. I'll say that for sure. Then I watched The Warriors, which is cool. That's another just cool movie that's cool and has cool guys in it doing cool stuff. I'm all for that. Yeah, I don't know what to say about The Warriors. It's probably the 80s in a nutshell. Because it's very unique. Nothing has been like it since, and really loved it. Then I watched Megan Mithrigan. I gave it a 1 out of 10. It probably deserves more than that. I'm sorry, Megan. It's just because I was so on the high of The Warriors, which is such a good movie, and then to hop to Megan, which is probably a pretty good horror movie. It's campy, and it knows it's campy, but it pulls away from Wink. It doesn't do that. Which is good. That's how it should be made. So it deserves some more credit than I'm giving it right now. I don't know. I wouldn't see it again though. It doesn't excite me. If you want more recommendations of fun horror movies that are campy, that know they're campy, but don't tell you, I have suggestions for you. Then watch Beautiful Disaster, which has one of those Sprouse twins in it. This is a movie that is ripping off After, which After is ripping off 50 Shades of Grey. Which is ripping off of Twilight. So we are at some degree of Frankenstein that I can't begin to understand. And because of that, it has such an incoherent plot. It almost feels like The Kissing Booth 2. It's so great. I loved it. I loved Beautiful Disaster. I gave it a 1, but I loved it. I had a great time watching it. The Munsters. I hate to say this. This is one of maybe this could be the second time ever in the trilogy history that we didn't finish it. I did give it a 1 because I feel like we finished it. We got about halfway through and we were like, okay, well let's see how much more is left and then we'll decide. And then we looked at the runtime. We saw another 45 minutes and we were like, we just started? I feel like this has been going on forever. Now, I love the Munsters show. My parents didn't let me watch normal TV. They had me watching the Addams Family and the Munsters and that sort of thing. So I actually grew up watching the show and loving these characters. And this sucks. This was bad, and I hated it. It was a bad movie that I did not like, and I hated it. Enough said. Speaking of bad, Superbad. This is a movie. It's almost a meme at this point that we will watch that almost every trilogy. If we don't, it's actually kind of a surprise. It's truly one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it to death. I will stand by it forever. It is. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's so overrated at this point because it's about it's just guys being dudes, whatever." And people say that about like Fight Club as well, and I can understand that maybe it's gotten too big for its britches, but if you're a guy and you watched it at the right time, it can just mean a lot. Like, even though it is a comedy that is absurdly funny, it is decidedly the funniest movie I've ever seen in my life. It can still have this very meaningful impact on your life, and I find different meaning in it at different times in my life. So, weirdly enough, Superbad. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Next, I watched Action Point, which this is a Johnny Knoxville movie. Um, I give it a 3 because I like watching Johnny Knoxville hurt himself. That's what the movie's about. It's, he's doing his own stunts, just like with the Jackass movies, and I do love the Jackass movies, and you just watch him hurt himself a lot. And that's it. That's the movie. It leans too hard on trying to have a plot in there, so what you gonna do? Then I watched Saw X, which sucks. Just kidding. I actually liked it. Saw X is... I've always been a fan. Well, not always. Definitely not always. But I've slowly become a fan of the Saw movies over time. Both ironically and unironically. There was someone, I think it was Your Movie Sucks? Yeah, who described being a Saw fan of being an unironic and ironic fan of the series at some point. And when you're watching it, like, knowing it's bad, but appreciating that it's bad, and wanting more of the bad, but it's also like, it's so bad, it's good. I don't know how to put it, but if you have been craving like an early Saw film, this is that. It's great, and it's kind of reimagines it a little bit. It kind of, it's like, what if Jigsaw was the good guy? Works for me, brother. I don't know. It's very different. Okay, we're in the home stretch here. We're getting into October. First thing I watched in October is a movie called No One Will Save You. It's an alien abduction movie that is also trying to tell a story of like life and grief a little bit, and I wasn't in the mood for that. I was going into spooky season. I wasn't ready to sit down and engage with it. I still did enjoy it enough. I gave it, I think, a 4. Yeah, a 4. But I wouldn't really recommend it. Unless you're a fan of, like, what's that movie, like A Ghost Story? It's kind of similar to that, but with an alien invasion sort of thing. I don't know. Then I watched the movie Gaslight. Wait a minute, there's no movie called Gaslight. You're just crazy. Anyway, that's where the term gaslight comes from. If you're not familiar, it's from, this was a play and then it was a movie, and I think the movie is kind of what really jump-started that term of gaslighting someone, because it's the story of a guy who is trying to steal from this woman, so he tries to make her think she's crazy. Problem is that the movie doesn't reveal that, but because the term gaslighting is so prevalent, it's kind of hard to be surprised by it. So when you're watching it, it is a little sloggy, because you do know where it's going, literally from the title. It's like John dies at the end or something. Like, you know where it's going. That doesn't happen in John dies at the end. John dies at the beginning. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I thought it was good. Thought it was cool. Coraline is a rewatch. Love me some claymation. Yeah, I honestly think that Henry Selick doesn't get enough credit for making Coraline. Everyone's like, isn't that the guy who made Nightmare Before Christmas? Yes, it is. Like, Tim Burton? No. Very confusing. I feel so bad for him, man, right? Like, Nightmare Before Christmas is obviously so good, and Henry Selick made it, but it's called Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, so you can be excused for thinking that Tim Burton made that movie. But, yeah, what a bummer. Men in Black, also a rewatch, also great. Another movie from my childhood that, I think it's probably what got me excited about alien stories, right? Like, I think that what I like most about alien stories is like the idea that like not that aliens are coming, but the aliens are here already, and they're like they walk among us right now, but we don't know where they are, and they're hiding in plain sight. I think that's fun, and yeah, I liked I love Men in Black, always have. Then I rewatched Muppets Haunted Mansion. Um, Again, I grew up as a big fan of the Haunted Mansion, and it's always been like something that I really, really enjoy. And what I enjoy even more than the Haunted Mansion is the Muppets. And Muppets Haunted Mansion is everything that I would probably want a Muppets Haunted Mansion to be. Um, and I think that's a 7 out of 10. You know, it's everything I want it to be, but that premise is only going to get you so far. So we're gonna call it a 7 out of 10 and call it a day. Then I watched Totally Killer for some reason. Um, this is a movie that's just obsessed with like the 80s and talking to you about, oh, I'm a zoomer. I don't wait, you're telling me that you guys didn't have DNA to figure this out? Like it's just that's fine if that comes up, but it kind of felt like that was what the whole movie was at some point. Was I was like almost making a tally of every time that the the stupid kid doesn't know what the thing is from the past. It's like grow up, okay? It's other things to be interested in. And I rewatched Mr. Boogedy. This is a decom from forever ago. Um, it's kind of bad, but is called Mr. Boogedy, and the dad is a gag salesman, as in he sells like chattering teeth and like cans of nuts that explode into snakes. And I find that aspirational. I watch it and I say, what happened to me? That could have been my life. Like I could support a family off selling people like buzzers for their hands. Devastating. Heartbreaking, really. Okay, moving on. A Haunting in Venice. Haunting in Venice is the new Kenneth Branagh movie starring Hercule Poirot. And I thought this one was great. This was a huge step up from Death on the Nile, and it was definitely huge leaps and bounds better than Murder on the Orient Express. So if you didn't like that one, don't rule this out just because of that. It's kind of a horror movie, and it's kind of a thriller, but more than anything, it's a mystery, and that's fun. And I kept watching it, going like, who's this Tina Fey looking lady in this movie? She's really interesting. It turns out it was Tina Fey that played that role, and I felt like a damn fool. That's what I have to say there. The Cable Guy was the next thing I watched. The reason I watched The Cable Guy was because I think that's why I watched The Burbs a second time, was I wasn't sure which of those two movies I had seen, because their poster is like a person standing in like a electric area, and one is like, is it Tom Hanks? It's not Tom Hanks, is it? Maybe it's Tom Hanks in The Burbs, and then it's Jim Carrey in the other one, so I don't know how I get these two mixed up, but it's a fun stalker movie, movie about like a guy stalking someone else. It's no like, what is that called? The King of Comedy. It's not quite at that degree of like, oh, this guy freaks me out. It's more of a Jim Carrey do silly voice vessel, which is cool too. I'm fine with that. But yeah, it's good if someone said I want to watch a movie from that time. There you go, silver platter. Next thing I watched was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. This was something I was actually actively seeking out for the longest time, and I could not for the life of me find a place to watch it until my friend Dylan found it. And he found it on Internet Archive. And he found it with the commercials that played when it aired on TV. That added so much to this movie to watch ads for like not Do the Right Thing, but like those kind of like 90s movies in there, and it had like this really intense ad about like the dangers or like what homeless people go through every single day. It's like pop quiz. You wake up and your friend is overdosing on and you're just like, oh my gosh. Anyway, the movie itself is really, really weird. It's nothing like the original at all. Couldn't be two more different movies if you tried. And I think that's good. I think my review for it was just like, yeah, he's kind of cooking here a little bit, because he is. It's totally different. He goes from one of like the most thrilling, like intense movies ever made to an actual like theme park of slashers. Like there's literally, it feels like who knows what crazy thing is around the corner. Oh, we're doing a loop now. We're twisting around and we're going down into the tunnels. Like, it does that, but as a movie, which is crazy. Next up, I watched Troll 2, which is a rewatch for me and one of my all-time favorite movies. All I'll say about this, because if you don't care about this sort of thing, you're not going to find it interesting. If you are looking to get into, like, watching bad movies, don't start with Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Certainly don't start with The Room, because you got to work yourself into The Room. This Troll 2 is so funny, top to bottom, and it's so earnest. It is made as honest as anything can be made in this crazy, messed up world. I love Troll 2. I anytime someone recommends we watch it, I will always say yes, and usually that person is me, because I could just watch it 100 times. Okay, next up, Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2. I'm just going to wrap those up together into one, because I'm more of a fan of Kill Bill Volume 2 than I am 1. It's kind of a controversial opinion, but what's there to say, right? Love Kill Bill, the revenge story, Uma Thurman just kicking ass, taking names. Nothing wrong with that, huh? Then watched Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't know if I'm old enough for this movie yet. And I feel that a lot in a lot of Scorsese movies. When I'm watching them, I'm like, am I old enough for this yet? Because it's so thoughtful and well constructed, and I am just not mature enough. I mean, I'm 28, but I think when I'm like 60, then I'm gonna love this movie. But I'm almost there, but I'm not quite there yet. So I gave Killers of the Flower Moon a 7, and it'll probably turn into like an 8 or a 9 as it matures, as it ages like a fine wine. Next thing, watch Do the Right Thing. Another 7. Man, I was having a good month, to be honest. Do the Right Thing is as good as people say it is. Really surprising ways, actually, because it feels especially relevant, especially over the last like 10 years or so. I feel like the conversations being had in this movie are similar to the conversations we're having now, and the movie doesn't necessarily make a firm stance, right? It talks a lot about like protesting and the pros and the cons of protesting, which I think is a very engaging conversation for the modern day, but it doesn't have a solution also. So we can't like watch this movie and have this be the come to Jesus moment with everyone, because like it says that these two things will always be at odds with each other. And I think it's really good. Then, speaking of Nightmare Before Christmas, The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's such a tight movie, right? Like, I love the length of that film. It is just shy of like an hour and a half. It's got just the right amount of music, just the right amount of plot, fantastic performances, has changed the lives of all the goth kids growing up forever. I don't even know what goth kids dressed like before Night Before Christmas, to be honest with you. Like, what what did you do during Christmas? Did you just like not participate? And now you got a reason. So, Night Before Christmas, exceptional film. Good job, Henry Selick. Tim Burton, great artistic vision. You can have that. Princess and the Frog was a rewatch for me. I watched this movie years after it came out and was pleasantly surprised by it, and continued to enjoy this movie now. You know, I don't know if there's much to say about it except for I think we were all excited because we thought this might be the beginning of the next 2D age for Disney, and it simply was not. They decided that that is not the route that they wanted to go. I think they could have pulled it off, but they just decided not to. And Tiana is such a fantastic Disney princess. Like, what happened? Massacre at Central High is a weird movie because it's Heathers, but before Heathers. And you might say, okay, so it clearly very much inspired it. It's possible. But this was like it's made in 1976. It is a weird sexploitation movie, but at the same time, it is telling the Heathers narrative. So it kind of feels like it didn't really catch on, and a lot of people didn't know about it. So it's possible that the director of Heathers saw this first, but it's not better than Heathers. It's worse in almost every way, I think. But you can see how much, at least JD, which is Christian Slater's character, how much he was influenced by the lead in Massacre at Central High. It's really obvious when you watch it. Okay, last couple months here. Let's move into November. The first thing that I watched in November was Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm not super familiar with these games. I've never played them. When they were first coming out, I remember seeing a lot of recommendations for them. I am tentatively aware of MatPat and Game Theory. I used to watch them when I was younger. And I've probably seen a couple of videos about it then. So that's about my knowledge of this going in. And I thought it was pretty good. Especially for what it was. This movie feels great for like a teenage crowd that would be fans of the game. If I understood more of the lore, I think I would have liked it a little bit more. But I did have some knowledge going in, whereas my friend had nothing. So we got to see it in an empty theater, which is always my favorite thing in the world. Because that means you can just talk through the entire thing. Because I'm not an asshole. Okay, I'm never gonna do that. When there's another soul in that theater, you won't hear a peep out of me. But as soon as there's no one in there, I'm gonna yammer my ass off. But yeah, so we got to see it in an empty theater, and so I got to explain everything that I understood, at least, as it was happening. So at least I got to use some of that knowledge. And you know what? Those puppets were made by the Jim Henson Creature Workshop. So they're damn good puppets. I will say that. Then I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is another kick-ass movie. It's so strange. I thought it might be like a pretty faithful adaptation of the book, which I've been reading. It's maybe, I don't know. It's like a reimagining of the material in vast ways. Keanu, I'm so glad you haven't tried to do a British accent since then, because damn, that's the worst British accent I've ever heard in my life. And I do community theater. Next thing I watched was Thanksgiving. I love I think it's Eli Roth it's Eli Roth who made it. And for Grindhouse, which is where Death Proof comes from, they had like fake trailers, and the thing he made for it was a slasher movie called Thanksgiving, and that's what we got. So again, I love a slasher. The scene, like the inciting incident scene during Black Friday, is gruesome, man. Like, it made my heart sink. There were parts of it I could handle some gore in movies. It had me like pulling away. The sound design was really good, and it was something. So Thanksgiving, definitely a thumbs up, but not for the faint of heart. The one thing I will say is that I think it got up too much trying to become a Scream movie when it didn't need to be a Scream movie. We don't need to do a whole investigation, who done it, like who's the killer thing. It's fine by me if we don't do that. We also don't need to have a silent killer. We've had enough of those. Speaking of the killer, David Fincher's new movie on Netflix. Just pop that bad boy on there, and nobody seems to have known that David Fincher, the guy who made Fight Club, Gone Girl, Seven, the guy's responsible for all these iconic movies. He's now just like pumping out things onto Netflix, and I liked it. I liked the beginning more than I liked the end, which is funny because I was talking to my friend about it. He has the exact opposite opinion. He's like, the end took it there for me, but I was sleeping through the beginning. So I guess it depends on what you wanted from the movie. It's going to depend on what you get there. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you're a fan of Fincher or assassin kind of movies, or like movies where people are like on the run. Then it's pretty good for that. Mission Impossible. This was a rewatch for me because I got really sick. And when I get sick, I either want to watch Lord of the Rings or heist movies. So I watched Mission Impossible. Tom Cruise, hot damn, what a cool, good-looking dude. Like, you just watch him be cool and just be this aspirational, cool guy. Maybe not in real life, but like in the movies, they knew how to use this guy, especially there in the '90s. So I really love Mission Impossible. And similarly, I had watched The Italian Job right after that. And again, I was still sick. And I had never seen The Italian Job before, and I did like it. It was a step down from Mission Impossible, but I was like, man, I just want more of this. I don't want to go where the Mission Impossible series goes. I want to watch like Ocean's 11, but not Ocean's 11. And The Italian Job did give me a little bit of that at the very least. So I definitely like The Italian Job as well. I'm right here at the end. You can tell I'm like getting through these faster and I'm running out of steam. But I'm looking at my list here. We got 6 more movies. So let's do it. The Social Network. This is the best alien invasion movie of all time. Hands down. Watching Mark Zuckerberg go from asshole to tyrant is fantastic. And I mean, potentially one of the best movies of the 2010s. I'm not even really scared to say that, to be honest with you, because I saw it when it came out in theaters and being like, thought I was gonna watch a story of the website that I like. It's like hardly about Facebook at all. It's just about like this evil man and kind of how he became what he became, and the lawsuits and how they unfold. This is a biopic done right, for the record. You don't have to show every part of everything. Just show us the story about the characters. That's what we care about. So focus on the characters when you're making a biopic. For the love of God, no one has done it better since The Social Network, and I don't think anyone ever will. Thank you, David Fincher. This was better than The Killer. Then one of the most surprising things, I think, for people who are friends with me on this list is Spider-Man: Homecoming. I have finally seen, because as I mentioned very early on in this long video, Spider-Man: Homecoming has been kind of a thorn in my side because in Birdman, Michael Keaton decides that he needed to become Birdman again, and he became this the I don't know the superhero names, man, whatever, the bird dude. And this was not bad. You know, it is. I love that it's a Spider-Man movie that focuses on like, but who's gonna be my prom date? Like that. If I'm gonna watch a Spider-Man movie, that's what I want to watch. You know, I want to watch the stupid high school stuff and yet like way over his britches, and then you know the twists in it with his girlfriend. I thought that was fun. You know, I liked it way more than I thought I would, but it's good. Then I watched Roald Dahl's Matilda the musical. Again, I'm a musical theater kid at heart. I have seen the musical for Matilda, and this did a pretty good job, I thought, of keeping that energy going. I thought I was going to kind of put it on and then maybe turn it off after like a couple numbers. I will say, abysmal opening. Oh my gosh. I don't think that they understood the assignment at all. Like, it's like they saw in Matilda the musical when all the kids are going, "My daddy says I'm a miracle," and all that, and they thought, "Oh, like this is fine." No, it's actually kind of like a grim way to start the show, but they're doing it as like a very positive thing. I don't know. Maybe my brain's messed up, but I was watching it and they were doing it like it's this happy moment. When to me, I'm always like, this is a very grim opening to this show. But regardless, otherwise tonally, it was even more grim than the musical, which I thought was a good way to go with it. I liked it. Liked it way more. Then I watched Mishima, A Life in Four Chapters. Definitely would not have seen this without the Criterion Channel, and more specifically, my friend recommending it to me because of my theater addiction. Fascinating story about this man's life, but more fascinating because of the set design. Because the whole thing is done in play format, basically. Like the sets are constructed like sets, and they're kind of disconnected, or they're in black rooms, but they're just like walls that are constructed for this, and it's so it's such a good way to do it. I was just really impressed with that more than I was with the actual story. To be honest with you, I did start to tune out the story a little bit because, again, I have a hard time reading subtitles and going back up and down. So a lot of the time I was literally just watching I was watching the sets be cool. Sue me. All right. Now we are into the last two movies, and these are the two movies I've seen here in December. The first one being Violet Night. This is basically, they tried to do sort of Home Alone meets Die Hard. It was kind of the goal, I think. And it's less than both of those movies, but I do appreciate what they were doing. They actually did it pretty well. It is kind of like the lesser of two. There's no reason why you couldn't just watch Home Alone and then watch Die Hard, or vice versa. There's no reason why not. And this is, I guess, the Zoomer version, right? Like, compact it together, feed it to me, give me Hop from Stranger Things to make him Santa Claus or whatever. And there were things I did like about it. I thought the violence in it was pretty well done. It just wasn't corny enough for me. For this movie to really succeed for me, I think it needed to be, just need to be a little bit more corny. All right, Charles, we've made it to the final film. I'm very sorry to wake you, but this is important because we've been sitting here for literally hours talking to them. You have anything you want to say? Guess not. The last movie that I've watched this year, and this is so funny because I'm going to watch more movies this year. So this video is forever going to be incomplete in my mind. But here we are. Was A Muppet's Christmas Carol. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Muppet's Christmas Carol is... I used to like it, now I love it. It might be the definitive Christmas movie to me. This and Elf are just up there. It's one of the best it's the best version that you're going to find of A Christmas Carol because it's faithful to the story, but also has this wonder of the Muppets, you know? And Michael Caine saying himself personally that he's like, I'm going to treat this like I'm acting for the Shakespeare Theater Company, right? Like him going fully in and him fully committing to this character of Scrooge. It works, man. It just works. So I can't say enough good about Muppets Christmas Carol. If you're gonna watch something this Christmas, give it a try if you haven't seen it. Also, there's on Disney Plus, which is where I watched it. They have two versions. One, the normal version, but if you go into extras, they also have the version that has the song "The Love Is Gone" in it, which I think is a really beautiful, touching scene. But it is a downer. So I understand it's a Christmas movie, so they didn't want to really bring you down. That's why it's been removed from versions. But I am so thankful that Disney Plus actually has the complete version, or whatever it's called, that also includes that. So if you're gonna see that one, please watch the complete version. Because even though it is a downer, it makes the final number of the movie, like "The Love We Found" or something, I think is what it's called, is obviously a callback to that, and so it will make you feel all warm and you'll cry and have a great time. Whew. And that's it. I don't know how long that video was, to be honest. I forgot to really internalize when I started doing this, but if you did follow along with this, thank you so much for watching. My mouth is very dry now. I probably should have prepared a little bit more for this, but to be honest, as soon as I saw my cat was gonna be joining me, there was just no way I wasn't going to fully commit at that exact moment. So again, thank you all so much for joining me on this journey here. This is coming from my YouTube channel, which I basically haven't really touched here, but I'm going to be adding a lot. We've got a lot of new stuff that I'm going to be adding in here, such as I'm going to be doing a video about The Legend of Zelda coming up, and then I also have a unique take on Charlie Kaufman's media as a whole, and an interesting way that I like to digest it. So I'd love to share that with you as well. So if you can, I'd love for you to subscribe, the like button. I think it makes a big deal. I don't know, because I don't know what I'm doing. But thanks for coming on this journey with me. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Kwanzaa, happy everything. Hanukkah, what you got? I hope you're happy while you're doing it. Thanks for watching. Oh, did I wake you? I'm sorry.